Collin, how's it going?
It's doing good. It's been a while since we've done this little shindig.
Since we got together and
Yeah.
and shared with the world our feelings on video games. Hello everybody. This is Collin and Curtis. Crossplay is what we used to call this. What we still call it?
Maybe, I don't know.
Here we are.
Whatever. In the morning crossplay, whatever.
Yeah. In the afternoon, just whenever you want to listen. It is May the 2nd. Collin, Final Fantasy VII Remake released to the world a little under a month ago.
I don't believe you.
Well, that's true. So, believe it.
Okay.
Whatever your definition of Final Fantasy VII is, like, a version of it came out, and I have finished it, and you have finished it.
I have. Just last night, like 12 hours ago, I finished it.
This morning, technically, right? Like,
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, hot off the presses. So we're gonna chat about it. We're gonna share some thoughts on the game itself, and obviously get into some pretty heavy, deep spoilers and speculation, I'm sure, about what the future parts of this game might be.
Yeah.
So I guess let's just kick it off. So, like, before we get into story stuff, Collin, Final Fantasy VII, this remake has been a long time coming. Not even just from its announcement, which was a little under 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But, going back to, like, the PS3, like, demo test trailer thing that they put out, right? Like, this is something that people have been wanting for a very long time. And it's here. It's not turn-based, which is obviously something we've known about for a while. But briefly, can you share, like, what are your thoughts just on the original? And then what are your, like, thoughts on the game part? Maybe not the story specifically, but just, like, the video game part of this game. How did you feel finishing it?
So, like, with the original, really just kind of has, like, a special, because this is, like, the first Final Fantasy that I have played, like Final Fantasy VII was, and it was only just a few years ago when it was on PS4.
Yeah.
That game had always kind of meant something to me. I just kind of had a relation with a cousin that I had with this game, that, like, he had passed away, and just I remember watching the death of a prominent character.
Yeah.
I guess we can just go ahead and say it. Aerith's death in the original. We'll be spoiling both the original and the remake here.
Right.
But yeah, and I just remember being so young, and I just remember just being so saddened by it. And, like, I had no context for, like, what this was. And so being able to play even just the remake with, like, knowing what happens and whatnot, but just even, like, on a gameplay perspective, I think it modernizes it, like, really well. Whereas, like, I guess you can still technically do the classic gameplay mode. I didn't try that out at all.
I didn't either.
Yeah, I'd actually like to maybe try that. But I was very impressed, just the way they handled, like, the transition. I haven't played any of, like, the recent kind of Final Fantasies, being, like, either, like, 15, maybe a little more action based. But yeah, I think that transition worked really well, and even doing that, taking a 4 to 5 hour section of the original and flushing it out into, like, 30 hours is pretty incredible. I didn't know, and I think a lot of people didn't know how they were going to do it, but they did it.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, like, my like Final Fantasy VII story is like a bit different from a lot of people, because a lot of people were like, yeah, I played it when I was a kid, and yeah, that death scene, like, that was like a major deal, right? For me, I did not own a PS1, like, not for a long time, I don't think. And when I was in second grade, I had to have surgery on my leg, because I just had this weird, like, thing where, like, the bones were growing crooked in my leg, and, like, so I had to have surgery on that. And so I was out of school in second grade for, like, 8 weeks. It's on crutches, and so my dad, a buddy of his that he worked with, like, let us borrow the PlayStation 1 while I was just, like, on the couch. And there was a couple games that came with it. One of those was Final Fantasy VII, a game and series that I had no knowledge of at the time. I had no clue what this was. And it really wasn't even until Final Fantasy X that, like, I understood what this series even was. I think 10 was probably the first game of the series that I played, like, a significant amount of time. I remember playing 7 as I'm just like laying on this couch, having no clue what's going on. I don't even think I got past like the opening of the reactor bombing sequence. Like and then like I put it down and came back to it years later, having a lot of context as to what this game was and what the story was. Like I knew some of the story beats. Ended up finishing it later. So and a lot of this like like fast forward to this remake, for me there's not as much like nostalgia and the excitement for the remake. It's more just like it's this like mythological like stature that it has, right? This game, it's similar to like, you know, a Shenmue 3, like, you know, that we saw announced alongside it, or a new Half-Life game, right? Like,
yeah,
it's these games that have this like mythological status that when it happens, it's hard not to be excited. And also, yeah, you know, like from its reveal and going on, like every single time we saw it, it was like, this just looks so good. Like it feels like they're really nailing it. And even though a lot of the story had been like spoiled for me by the time I got to finishing it, you know, I still feel attached to those characters. I still like really, really like that game a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's cool to like, at least in my case, to go back to a game long after it had released and try and put yourself in the mindset of like, what would this have been like if I was playing it at its release? Like, what would my reactions have been to certain things? That's kind of how I was like when I went back to play the original Resident Evil games for the first time. It was like long after they came out.
Yeah.
And so I was always like approaching it with this perspective of like, I get that this game is showing its age, but what would it have been like? Would this have been impressive at the time? Like, what would I have thought? And I usually find that pretty interesting, like an interesting way to approach if you like go back to a game. But this new one, oh my god. This is probably some of my favorite combat, like in an RPG. You know, I don't know if I would consider like the From Software games. I think those are different enough. Like I probably prefer From Software above almost anything, right? Combat wise, but like for an RPG or an action RPG like this, you know, Square Enix has been putting out Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy 15 even, and other games, and I feel like this is the one that nails it the best. And it feels like this is the one that's closest to emulating turn-based combat without actually being turn-based.
Yeah,
and that was super cool to me. That like, I'm playing Trials of Mana right now, and it's a game where you have a 3-person party, and it's action based, and you can switch between your party members at any time. But the difference between the way it is handled between the two games is staggering. Final Fantasy VII, you can very easily issue commands to any party member at any time without switching to them. Like you have so much control over your party and what you are doing at any given moment. Whereas in Trials of Mana, like you don't really have a lot of control. Granted, that game is very easy and it doesn't really matter. But it's a pretty distinct difference, especially coming off of each other. The combat in this is just so. Like it's different, right? And I get why people would be upset that it's not turn-based, you know, when we found that out, when that was confirmed, but I can't imagine this game any other way. Like it's so much fun to just I can't think of another action RPG where you have a party system and you have as much control over every aspect of the fight than you do in Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, so I'm kind of throwing myself under a rock here, but I played it on easy.
Okay.
I don't know if you played it on normal.
I played on normal.
Okay.
Well, you have to play on normal to unlock, or you have to unlock hard by beating the game. So, I haven't played too much on hard yet.
Yeah, I haven't done that either yet. But because so most of the time I can like brute force my way. Like when you're playing on easy, you can just like brute force your way through something. You're like, okay, well the game probably wants me to do this, but like,
right,
I need to actually do this instead. But there was a few boss encounters, jumping ahead, like Reno specifically. Like I had to like I had to like take a step back and be like, okay, like what am I actually doing here? Like I can't just go into Punisher mode and just wail on this guy until his life is at 0. So I think it was probably about some of the later chapters that I felt like I started to finally like understand like what the game wanted me to do with like certain materia and spells. Even just like watching, just like how there's like so many little like shortcuts you can do, like the game doesn't tell you. There's like a couple tips and tricks videos that I had watched about, like one thing being like Barrett's arm gun, who's like one of my favorite players to play or characters to play as. I would almost say Cloud is like my least favorite to play as when you're playing. Where like when you're shooting the machine gun with Barrett and he does that extra blast, if you hit triangle immediately after that, he like does the charge and like
it's like an active reload.
Yeah, right. It's like half the animation. Where like if you just press triangle, he's got to go through this like whole thing where he brings his arm up and down. But if it's stuff like that that I just found was like so cool. And even when you're playing as Cloud, like like when to press triangle to switch from operator mode to Punisher mode without completely stopping everything. Like, because you can time it perfectly where you can just immediately go in from one mode to the other mode. And it's like some of that deep combat stuff that I found just really enjoyable that I'm still finding out stuff about.
Yeah, and one thing I will say, so like you mentioned like characters you like playing as, right? I think generally in RPGs it's easy for like the healer character, let's say, or to just end up not being good, or like not like they're great at healing, but they're not really effective at anything else. One thing I really appreciated about this game is like I feel like Aerith is just like incredible. She's, at least to me, like she was so much fun to play as. Like if she was in the party, I almost like just wanted to play as her because she has the ability where you can like lay down like a magic circle, and if you're in that circle, anytime you cast magic, it's twice, which that in and of itself is just a very good ability to have. But she's great, she can be great at healing, but she's also just got stuff that like you can rock it with her, like, right, you can just destroy enemies just using her. And it's fun, like and like Tifa also being like very martial artist focused, like she's a lot of fun to play as, and she's great at staggering and like building up a stagger meter against enemies. Barrett, like especially in one of the later chapters when you're just playing as him, actually, is like this great moment to like learn to love playing as Barrett, right? Because it's just it's just him, and you're going through some like research lab area, right? And like that's great. I do like playing as Cloud. Obviously, like I will say the switching between the different modes for him, I felt like there were some times where battles would get so hectic that I would like forget or not be able to tell what mode I was in, and there would be like kind of like a stutter step of like switching back and forth a couple times to be like, all right, yes, I'm in I'm in this mode now.
Yeah, so a thing I think that at least I noticed, and maybe I'm wrong about it, but I felt like if I was in Punisher mode and I pressed circle to do a dodge roll, he automatically went back to operator mode.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's cool.
But it can be tricky too, because I feel like that would happen sometimes, and I would be like, well, I don't want to.
Sure.
It's a design choice for sure.
Sure.
But I'm like, I don't want to go out of it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like combat, I think is incredible. I wanted to talk, and I guess we'll kind of like breeze over them a little bit when we get to like story stuff, but I like the side quest design in this game. The actual side quests are not anything that you haven't done before, especially in an RPG like this. But I liked the way that they were integrated into the game. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like Nier Automata, where the actual like things you were doing in the side quests were not like anything to write home about, but it was the context that the side quest would give you within the world and the characters you would meet, and the way it would, like, the world building that was done, basically, I thought was done really well. I don't know if you share that opinion or if you hated them.
Yeah, I liked a good amount of the side quests. Like some I felt like probably the least favorite ones, like, oh, go find these cats, and it's just like, okay. And
Right.
like finding the kids, I felt like was like, okay, now I'm just running around this environment, and I don't know if they only want me to be in this specific area or like if they're anywhere. Like especially like when you get to like chapter 14, you can go to like anywhere. You're just like, are these all over the place, or are they only in this specific sector? Or,
Yeah.
but I like the side quests. Overall, I actually made sure to try. I didn't get the trophy for doing all of them, but I thought I got mostly all of them.
So I don't
when I
know
did
if
them.
you've looked at like trophy guide stuff. There are two that you can't get on your first playthrough.
Oh, okay. Then that's probably it then.
So basically, in the wall market section, the choices that you make in that chapter like will determine what side quests that you're able to do.
Oh, okay.
So like it's relatively easy to do in like maybe an hour or so. Just because, and we'll talk about the way the chapter select is handled in a second. You can pretty easily go back to chapter, like load up chapter 9, do those two side quests and get it.
Okay.
Which I guess like I don't know. So you beat it. I don't know if you've like loaded it up and tried to load into chapter select or done any of that yet.
Yeah, I dabbled with it a little bit this morning.
Okay. So when you beat this game, you basically have like one save file. In hard mode, the way it is handled is that you just like chapter select into chapters to play it on hard, which is a little weird. And like the way the game is designed, it's like if you have a collectible you missed in, let's say, chapter 6, then you load up chapter 6. It's not like you go back to that area, you just load up the chapter.
Right.
Which works in some cases it makes sense, right? Because some locations are just destroyed, like at a certain point in the game. One thing I don't care for with this though is like in the instance of wall market, right? Like for some of those trophies, like you have to get the 9 different dresses.
Yeah.
And to do that, like, you have to, like, play a lot, like, I mean, that one you have to, like, load up chapter 3, play to a certain point to make certain choices, and then load up chapter 9 and, like, play through that chapter, which is not short by any means.
Yeah.
Or, like, to do those last 2 side quests, right? Like, I had to load up chapter 9, and if you remember, the beginning of chapter 9 is not wall market, it is, like, going through, like, a highway, destroyed highway, like... You gotta play through some game to get to certain points.
Yeah, the arm machine. Or whatever
and that's kind of annoying. And actually, like, it's weird coming off of RE3, which I think is like so incredible about like respecting your time. Or like you can skip everything if you. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but so RE3 has like most games do, and Final Fantasy VII has this in spades. The like slow walk and talk segments, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And RE3, like, if you're like doing multiple playthroughs, trying to get trophies or speed running or doing other like objectives, like different challenges, you can just skip those. Like when instead of like, oh, I got to go through the forced walk segment, as soon as it happens, pause, skip. And like you immediately like that section immediately stops, and you just can keep running again.
Okay.
And I don't know or remember if RE2 Remake had this.
I don't think.
But let me tell you, going through RE3 like and doing the platinum and doing like the multiple runs, it was like a game changer. To not have to worry. There was never a part in that game where it was like, this is the slow part. It was like whenever a cutscene or that thing would happen, it was just an immediate skip, and I was right back in.
Yeah.
Whereas now Final Fantasy VII like has a lot of these segments, and there's no skip in that. You're forced into it.
The only one I think they tell you is the bike mini game.
You can skip those.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's nice.
And even with those sections, like I hesitate to use the P word, which I call padding, but. Because I don't think it's that, but it is kind of also feels like that at times.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
So I did replay the first bike segment to get the trophy for that one.
Right.
And yeah, that one definitely, and maybe it was just because like the trophy is like not getting hit that many times. So playing through it again definitely was like, oh, this is a bit longer than I remember. The last one at the end of the game, like I'm really happy you can skip that because that one is
that got
long.
Yeah.
There's a lot happening in that one, so I'm thankful that that's skippable. But it's weird. It's I mean, I've been like in a mindset recently of like replaying games and getting more trophies, which is something I don't normally do, and so it's interesting to look at the way games handle certain things that would only really impact you on multiple playthroughs, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, this thing is like actually kind of annoying if you're playing through it multiple times.
Right.
Like the crane stuff in chapter 9. It's like, oh, all right.
And I even thought about it because like I knew going in that like, oh, okay, well I have to beat all the chapters again on hard to get the platinum if I want to do that. And I do remember going through chapter 9 and being just like, I'm gonna have to do all of this again if I want the platinum. I'm just like, oh no.
Yeah. Cool. And I mean, the good thing is like, you know, with side quests like this, there's not even that many of them, which I really appreciate too. Right? It's not like there's 100 of them. There's like 29, I think, and it's like just the right amount. I actually like don't mind the cat stuff either, just because again, it's like there's like a weird level of payoff for that, like just a weird amount of it later in the game with Wedge, but like generally speaking, right? I'm like, yeah, this is. I'm fine with it. I'm fine with like the mundane task because I feel like it's building more on this world, which is kind of what this remake is about, is like just doing that. So I don't mind it too much.
Yeah, the Angel of the Slums stuff was cool. I like that kind of side story.
Yeah, and I not to say that all of them are like home runs or anything, but they're stuff like that I really appreciated, just because again it was like, yeah, there was this like, this is weird, it's different, it's this new character that will maybe only be in this part, but I still appreciate it nonetheless.
Well, not necessarily, I guess, story, but if we're talking about side quests and that and characters, what did you think of Chadley?
Have you
I've heard
have you seen how that resolves?
Yes, I listened to the Easy Allies Spoilercast where it gets said, and that's crazy.
Yeah. I'm fine with Chadley. He like reminded me a lot of Hope from Final Fantasy XIII, who I do not like. I don't know why. Maybe they just look like weirdly similar. I'm fine with it. I like the VR challenges too.
Yeah, I like those.
And I like the battle goals he gave you. Stuff like that I do like, especially in a combat system like this. It gets you trying new things.
They retroactively work too. That's what I was so happy with, because I was like, well, I've been doing this the whole game, and now I have to go do it from the beginning. And it's like, no, it already like went forward.
I think the second, like, you kind of get the challenges in like sets, right? Like at different points in the game, like he kind of dumps new ones on you.
Right.
The second set that I got, I remember like almost all of them were just immediately cleared.
Nice. Yeah.
And I texted my brother. I was like, oh my god. We live in a world where like Animal Crossing is like a daily thing, and I love that game, but there's like 500 things I wish they would change, like just minor quality of life stuff. This is just like a great example of one where it's like a really small thing, and ultimately like a lot of these things come at a point in the game where you will naturally get most of them anyways, but it's so nice to just like to be like, hey, you've already done this, like, so here. Like, we're just going to give it to you because you've already done this like 7 times.
Right.
And that's awesome. I love that stuff.
Yeah, I was so happy.
Yeah. Cool. Is there anything else we wanted to touch on before getting into like story stuff?
If we're talking more about side quest stuff, I don't know if we wanted to also touch on Johnny real quick.
Yeah, sure.
I was like listening to Johnny and I was like, okay, this voice actor sounds familiar, and I couldn't quite place it. Do you know who he is? When I saw the credits, I finally realized who it was. Do you know who that actor is?
I just realized I never looked in the credits to see who it was. I would say Troy Baker or something.
No, it's Yuri Lowenthal or something like that. He's the guy that did the Spider-Man voice.
Yeah.
Of Peter Parker in PS4 Spider-Man.
He definitely was like, yeah, this is someone I hear a lot. but I don't know.
And I was like, man, this guy's voice like sounds so familiar, and and then like I finally got that after the fact, but he's he's just kind of being this like weird, obnoxious kind of character. But yeah, like you see him kind of early on, and then you see him in Wall Market. Then you see him, I think, later in like chapter 14 where he gets robbed from that gal, and obviously
I don't remember her name. Not
Kyrie.
Yeah.
It looks like Kyrie, and then I was like, oh, is this the Kingdom Hearts
it's all blending together.
Yeah.
Well, have you done the Yozora boss fight yet?
I don't think so.
Anyways, so
okay, all right.
It all bleeds together.
But yeah, then it's also kind of alluded that you're probably gonna see Johnny in the next game because he's like, I'm leaving town.
Yeah, he does say that. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so like right when he said it, I was like, okay, he's gonna show up at some point in the next game.
And I mean, we'll get to it, but there's like Kyrie is one, but there's multiple characters in this game where you're like, hey, they're new characters, but they're probably going to be in the next game too.
Yeah, I like 5 of them I can think of like right now, even.
I mean, like Don Corneo, like very clearly is going to return.
Yeah. And
I'm blanking on the guy's name.
Leslie.
Who, like, has it out for him. Leslie, yes. Leslie's story is not finished by any means.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
We've not seen the last of Leslie, and I mean, I guess we'll get there, but like there are Avalanche members that will probably be back to in some way, shape, or form.
Even the kind of guy that falls off the radar, but Roche.
Yeah,
I expect him to show back up at some point.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, let's just get into this. We're gonna go chapter by chapter. We'll probably fly through like the majority of these. Obviously, we have a lot to say about the last 4 hours of this game. 4 to 6, we'll say, and yeah. So this game opens up. That we can almost like bundle the first 2 chapters together. The first like 2 hours of this game, to me, are like. When this game came out, like, preloaded midnight release, I played the first 2 chapters, like the first 2 hours, and went to bed. And it was like going to bed on cloud 9.
No pun intended.
Not intended. No pun intended. The first 2 chapters of this game, one is it's the reactor. It's going in, doing that, and then you do the aftermath of that. Collin, one thing I want to touch on a little bit is the opening cutscene of this game. So it's some of it's actually pretty similar to the reveal trailer, which we get to in a little bit. But the opening cutscene of this game is like it's day, it's cameras zooming over Midgar, and then you see the city, you see kids playing, you see people at work, the streets, smells, the sounds, right? I just I don't know if this like resonated as much with you as it did me, but the opening song, which is just One Winged Angel, but it's like a remixed version, like a different version of it, right? And it's it's like the chants of the song, but you only hear like the first half of it, and it just it kind of makes for this very like haunting setting of like the tone for this game, where it's the scene itself like is daylight, it's a city, there's nothing that like evil about it, but you just like there's this sense of like impending doom because of the song that is playing. I've loaded up the clip, like the intro clip of this game on YouTube, just to hear that song, like specific version of One Winged Angel. Just to me, it was this like super haunting, like, oh my god, like these guys don't know, these characters don't know what's happening, like they don't know who's coming, like I don't know, like to me it just like had this very like profound impact on me for some reason.
You definitely have more of kind of like musical reference cues than I do. Again, like I played through the game a few years ago on PS4. Again, I played it on like 3 times speed or whatever you can do on PS4. So it kind of flew right through it. And there's still plenty of things that I'm like, I completely forgot about. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that happens, I think. But yeah, I know the One Winged Angel theme, but I guess I didn't even notice it.
It's very like subdued. It's definitely like it. You know, as we get into some of the crazier spoiler stuff, like, and then looking back on that, like the opening cutscene and thinking about the music and how it's used, like, is kind of a whole other crazy like revelation to me. But at least when I was first playing it, and like that was the way that game opened. This game opened. I just loved it. Like, it was immediate. Like, I love this. Like, I love the way that they are setting the tone here. And the way it just bleeds into the opening theme of the original, as we like have the fly over Midgar as it's nighttime, we see Aerith, and the alley, and then it like bleeds into the train and having Cloud like land on the train and then get out as they rush into the reactor. Like, all of that could not have been better. Yeah. I feel. It was, I think you and I once said, like, as we would see more gameplay of this, we're just like, how do they keep nailing it? Like, every time we see it, it's perfect. And like, that was how this opening felt to me. It was just like, oh my God, they get it. They understand. Like, yeah. They fully convinced, in the opening. Right. So we do the reactor segment. The first boss to me, like, I know you were talking about, the fight with what's his name, Rufus?
Reno.
Yeah. So like, that's definitely a good example of like, this is me learning the game, right? Or like the game forcing me to learn it. The fight with the Scorpion was like my revelation that like, oh, this isn't going to be like brain dead combat. This is
Cyber Connect 2 combat.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to like think about this a bit. Yeah. I kind of like stumbled through that fight. It was like, it was messy, but I made it through. Cool. So we set the timer. Explosion happens. So chapter 2, and the majority of it, like, as you're going back to the slums, like, you're walking through the city. It's just like post explosion, things are on fire, and you're just like hearing people talk about things. Like, what did you think of the way chapter 2 like went? Like, what do you think of like that expansion of the story, which is like the first like new stuff?
Yeah, so just seeing like kind of just the despair and just the destruction going around everywhere. And I'd actually played this game kind of along with the MinMax, so shout out to them, like deep dive game club thing they got. And I think one of them like had a pretty good thought of being like, it's like the Twitter feed basically, like on the left, where it's like all these people talking and it's just like going in a row, just talking about how much just despair is going on. And of course, Jessie blew up the reactor with her, it's Jessie's bomb, but then unbeknownst to the characters, Heidegger and the Shinra president kind of added on to the explosion to make it worse than it actually was, to make it look like Avalanche did something even worse. So just kind of seeing, I was kind of hoping for maybe more of a reveal with that, being like, oh, guess what? Like, you didn't actually do this. You know what I mean? Like, your bomb actually wasn't too big. Like, you know, Jessie really never finds that out. All that much.
And like, I think about that a lot. Like, I don't want to tangent too much. I think about that a lot with like storytelling. It's just the idea of like threads intentionally being left hanging. And part of me wonders if maybe that won't happen in part 2. Like, part of me wonders if this will continue. Like, if we'll get into part 2 and there will still be like elements of this idea, because they're like, the game starts setting up this Avalanche Shinra dynamic where like we're seeing a little bit more of what that means, right? Like, the first example, like you just mentioned, is Shinra is like actively working to make like the destruction of Avalanche far greater than they intend. And so it's like they're fudging the numbers a little bit, right? And I don't think that much of that was present in the original. I think this is a little bit new. Like, there was a little more focus on that. And I kind of have a feeling that that's going to continue into the next part. Especially as, you know, we talk about the remnants of Avalanche, I guess. I think there's still time for that stuff to be resolved. But one comment I will make about like all the like text on the side, like MMO style stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
At first it was super distracting, but as I got used to it, I came to like appreciate it more.
Yeah.
Because to me it felt like, and I don't know if this is the intention, but kind of the way I was like thinking about it was that I'm not really supposed to sit here and listen to each one of these. I'm supposed to just run by and hear a couple words and let that be it. Because to me it like felt a little more real of like, yeah, that's just what will happen. You'll just be walking down the street and hear someone say something, and like 2 words will like stick out to you, and you'll go, wait, what? Like, so I don't know. Like it was a distraction at first, but then it became something that like I appreciated a lot.
Yeah, I always kind of ran around different environments to be like, okay, what are these people saying? And then eventually like, you run through them again, and they're just kind of like repeating the same things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked that kind of Twitter feed, I guess, of it. It felt like a lot of people talking at once rather than like, oh, I'm just going to walk up to this person and this person's going to specifically talk, and I'll walk up to that person and they'll specifically talk.
Right.
It is kind of like, wow, like all this stuff is going on like right now, like, you know, real people having their own conversations.
Right. So before we move on into like chapter 3, there's some things that do happen in the first 2 hours of this game. So like obviously like seeing the aftermath and getting to see people's like reaction is pretty new. Like that was not in the original game. And even like this whole kind of subplot with Jessie, right, where she's like, and the other people of Avalanche, where they're just like, oh my god, like, are we doing the right thing? Like, is this actually the right, like, is this right?
Right.
Or are we doing more harm than good? Like, that also, I don't remember being super present in the original. And I like that stuff a lot. I think that stuff is great. And that's, like, exactly what, like, I wanted from this, right? When they're like, it's going to be in parts. Like, this is the kind of stuff I was looking for. Of, like, yeah, like, I want to get to know the members of Avalanche more. And we certainly get that, and we'll get into that in a second. The other thing that we see, or we start to see in these first 2 chapters, one are these I'm blanking on is it Death Eater? No, not Death Eater.
It's the Dementors.
Dementors,
the Harry
yes.
Potter thing.
I'm glad that we were on the same page with this.
Yes, I knew you were going to say. Yeah.
So they're called Whispers in this game. We see them in the opening with Aerith. But when Cloud does run into Aerith in chapter 2, as he's like kind of going through this aftermath, they run into each other. So we see them there. And it feels like to me, and everyone, all the like impressions and spoiler like podcasts I've listened to, it seems like to me pretty unanimously, everyone like pretty immediately was like, yeah, I kind of figured that they were like the fans.
Yeah.
Or it was like a metaphor for the fans, and I feel like I was probably there too pretty quick. What did you like? Do you remember what your thought? What was going through your mind like when you first like started running into these things?
So for some reason, like, I guess I just thought they were like remnants of the ancients, like they were like some of the ancients like themselves. That was like, I guess, my first thought. Where like, because they were haunting Aerith, and of course Cloud doesn't see them until Aerith touches Cloud.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was like, maybe that's like how they're tying that together. I'm not sure.
I remember like when this was announced, and shortly after we found out it would be in parts, I remember like having conversations with my brother, and I was like, yeah, like, I bet they're going to call it like a reunion or something. I remember like thinking that like, yeah, they won't call it Remake Part 1. It'll be Final Fantasy VII Reunion. And it'll be like this double entendre meaning, right? Where it'd be like, oh yeah, reunion, huh? Like yeah, we're getting everyone back together. But like reunion like was a thing in the story. Like it's a thing in 7, right? Like that's a pivotal moment of the story. And again, my memory is a little hazy on the original. It's been about 5 years actually since I last played it. I played it immediately following the announcement of the remake.
Sure.
But I remember like in that scene for Reunion, there was a lot of like, you know, hooded figures, and I think at first I just assumed that those were the same, and maybe like I kind of assumed that they were just one and the same.
Yeah, the ones from like Nibelheim.
Yeah,
in the original.
And I think I just assumed that like I think early in the game, very very early in the game, my working theory as far as like how this was going to end or where this would end is that like parts of the story were going to get moved up.
Yeah,
that was my expectation, was like, yeah, they're actually going to like take X moment in the story and move it forward a little bit, and that will be it'll be big, like a climactic enough part of the story for them to be able to end on. So we'll talk about Whispers much more later on.
We even had the moment right before that, which talking
the
about
other
fast forwarding parts of the game, way up, seeing Sephiroth within like the first 2 chapters, just like that.
So there's the scene with him where you first meet him. I don't know what your thoughts were on that. I was a little unsure, right? Like I wasn't. It was like one of those like, okay, wait and see. Curious where this is going. I don't know what I think of this yet. Because a big part of 7, like a big part of that story is that Sephiroth is just this looming figure that you don't see for a very long time.
Yeah.
You just hear about him.
Yeah.
You could say that you just hear whispers of Sephiroth. But
yes.
Anyways, great. All right, so moving on. Chapter 3, you're back in the slums. You go to the what's the like the bar that they have set up?
Seventh Heaven.
There it is. Pretty heavy like side quest chapter, but it is you start getting to know the members of Avalanche more. Jesse, along with Tifa and Aerith to an extent, are just completely crazy about Cloud. Almost 100% of the time, especially with Jesse.
Yeah.
But what did you think of? I mean, so like 3 and 4, and we can talk more about 4 like as we move on. But like at the start, like what did you think of Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse just as characters? Like these are 3 characters that we don't really get to know that much about them in the original, and like this game, like it's a lot of them.
I'm glad they were able to flesh them out, because I completely forgot about those characters in the original game. Like, I don't know why, but I was like, I just completely forgot about who these people were. So being able to get more like context of that is great. Like, there's even like other certain Midgar points in the original that I played through that I just do not remember happening. I'm like, I guess I played through that. I don't remember.
I'm curious, is there anything like specific that you're like, oh yeah?
Like, I guess even like, fast forwarding, but I guess like some of the eluded deaths and stuff like that, like I just don't remember that stuff at all, I guess. So I remember like
definitely remember, but
I remember like the plate falling, and I remember like I think it's like whoever it is like falling off the pillar, but like I just don't, for some reason, like recall like that being like a big moment for me. Like I remember much more of the Wall Market Corneo stuff from the like Midgar section of the original. So being able to get more, and like it's really got me excited, because I didn't platinum PS4 regular Final Fantasy VII. I got like 70% of the trophies, and like that really makes me want to go back and play through that section again and get some of those trophies. So and to be like, oh, what are these? Too. Yeah, and thinking about like, whoa, these characters, and learning more about them and such. I liked them. Wedge was a little, I don't know if I want to say like stereotypical, I guess.
Okay.
But yeah, I liked all 3 of them. I feel like we got I feel like Biggs is kind of the one that got left out a lot. Like I felt like we got a lot of Jesse, we got a lot of Wedge, but it's like kind of like, oh yeah, Biggs is also there, I guess.
I think even just personality wise, it feels like the 2 of them are the ones that would just stand out more inherently, right? Like,
sure.
Jesse is very like, she's very sarcastic. Like she jokes a lot. She's very flirtatious with Cloud, especially. Like that stuff is going to stand out. And then Wedge, he's like definitely a little bit more on the comedic side of just like comedic relief. And he's got the cats, right? Like there's like, I think with Wedge, I mean with Jessie obviously, there's in chapter 4 a lot of very like personal notes for her. So I think of the three, she is like the one that I think stands out a lot more, just story wise. But
yeah, her theme is amazing.
Yeah, and I think Wedge like as well. Like there's not like story specific stuff for him as too. It just feels like there's some like heavier stuff with him later, right? Like, you know, we'll talk about it, but like going through the lab and finding him and the aftermath after the plate drops, like with him specifically, like I think it's a little bit more impactful. Whereas yeah, like Big's kind of, he's there, he's present, but he doesn't have like that moment.
Yeah,
it feels like.
Yeah.
So chapter 4, yeah. So like Jessie, I guess we should say before I even start with that, because I do want to emphasize, at least me personally, I don't know if you feel the same. Like, I strongly feel like above all else, they completely nailed the characters in this game. Obviously, like very specifically Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, and Barrett. Like the interactions that they have together, the conversations, like the way they look, the way they play, like the way they talk to each other, like I felt like everything about them was just so on point that like the majority, or if not all of this game. One thing that really stood out to me is just, I mean, yeah, I was gonna just say like, yeah, Tifa like really stood out to me, but Barrett did too, and so did Aerith, and so did Cloud. Like I feel like those 4 characters was just so well done. I love like everything. I just like, especially like these early chapters, but really everything, like the interactions between Tifa and Cloud, like in chapter 3, I adored. Like I thought those were just so good. The flashbacks between the two of them, listening to Barrett just be the like social justice warrior, right? Of the party. Like he, I see people be like, yeah, he's just angry, but it's like, yeah, dude, like he should be. Like Bear's got a reason to be angry. Like everyone else should be as angry as he is. Like he's fighting for, like he believes in something and he's fighting for it. And like, yeah, he yells, but like that's what he does. Like I love Barrett in this. And Aerith as well. Like Aerith is like funny. And like I think the way she like acts and treats Cloud is just like, it's everything.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
So I didn't want to say that, but going into chapter 4, so Jessie, kind of invites Cloud in this like late night espionage like mission. She's kind of like hush hush about what it's gonna be, and then of course Biggs and Wedge are like, yeah, we're coming along. How did you? So chapter 4 is like you go and you're specifically trying to infiltrate like a lab or like a, you know, power plant or whatever to get something that Jessie needs for the next bomb.
Yeah, I think it was like the armory or some Shinra armory.
But the other side of this is you're visiting where her parents live. So what did you like, just this chapter as a whole, like what did you think about it? Because it's like completely new, like totally unique to this game.
Yeah, so we do have the motorcycle ride at the beginning, where we do meet Roche, who defies physics.
Yeah,
with his motorcycle.
It's Devil May Cry 5.
Yeah, it's just kind of like crazy. So yeah, and we get more of him later. But I think one of my favorite moments in the game is after you're on like top of the whatever it is, sector 6 or 5 or whatever. I can't remember whatever plate that is, where you go to Jessie's house, and just walking around that kind of nighttime city with Jessie's theme playing in the background. I would say Jessie's theme is like one of like probably like top 3 themes in this game. Love it. And so that was just one of my favorite. Like, I'm like, I just want to like stand out here the entire time. And so I loved that
There's a lot of like, I mean, I know a lot of conversation has been had and happening about like some of the textures in various parts of this game.
Yeah.
And yeah, totally valid. But there are also parts of this game that it's kind of just unreal, and I think part of it is just because like, yeah, the game that we played before is a PlayStation 1 game that looks very, very different. And so seeing, like, when you go to Walmart, right, and like when you see that, and you remember how it looked in the original, it's like, it's just kind of crazy to see, and it's almost, you just see things in disbelief. And granted, this chapter is totally new, but yeah, there was something about just like running up and down the streets of like where Jesse's parents live, and like it's a small area. There's not a lot, but there's something about it, right, where you're just like, this is, yeah, like this is a Midgar like I've never seen it before. Yeah, like this is totally what they're going for.
Yeah.
And it's like little moments like that that I think really help sell, I guess, like what the grander vision is in all of this. And granted, a lot of it is, remains to be seen whether or not it'll be good, but yeah. So like, what do you think of Roche? Like, I'm definitely on the team inside of like, I love him and I loved his boss fight, but I wonder, like, where do you fall in on all of this?
I liked him. I don't. It's kind of a thing with this game. You don't really like understand why he's there. Like, he really doesn't have. Like, the game doesn't really change if he's there or not there. Like, I expected him to show up like later in the game. But really, like, off that fight you have in the armory with him, like, you don't see him ever again.
Yeah.
And he. So correct me if I'm wrong, but he is also a soldier first class. Was that correct? Or he was also just a soldier at least.
I remember if it was, yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, because he knows Cloud, and I think Cloud knows him. I feel like I'm saying words right now, and all I'm thinking about is that laugh of his.
Yeah.
Just in my brain, that I'm just thinking about.
It's it's definitely very Advent Children, which I've seen like people compare him to, or it's just his like very over the top nature, and especially like, the Midgar segment isn't like story wise, like, it's not that crazy and over the top yet. So yeah, I totally expected him to like show up at some point later, and he didn't. And it was more that like after the game was done and like a day later, I was like, oh yeah, Roche, where did he go?
Yeah, so I mean, fast forwarding a lot, but even the when like towards the very end of the game where you do like the final highway section, and they're like, you hear that, and you hear the motorcycles, it's like, here he comes.
That was so great.
And then it's like, no, he's not there. Never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roche is the final boss of the game. He just okay, cool. So yeah, chapter 4 was like our first taste of like pretty like heavy story, like new additions, right? And I generally like I really liked it a lot. I was like, yeah, this is totally like hitting the beats of what I want from this. Yeah. We can kind of like rush through the next few, like a lot of the chapters following this, I feel like are grouped together in a certain way. So like, chapter 5, 6, and 7 are like, you can kind of group those 3 together. Basically what happens from here, you at first you're not invited to go on the next reactor bombing mission,
right?
Jesse tells you like, hey, like, actually we're good, we don't need your help, until those darn whispers, they're at it again, Colin. They show up in the slums, and just like mass hysteria breaks out.
Yeah, everybody sees them now.
Yeah. Jesse gets injured. There's a big fight where you're like fighting them off. She's injured, which means that they're down a person, which means Cloud's coming. He's back on the mission. So Tifa, Barrett, and Cloud hop on a train. Some stuff happens there. Train, like, they have to jump off the train. And so you go through the subways, and then you're like under the plates, and there's. So again, like, I'm curious your thoughts on this, but this is like chapter 6. You're under the plates. There's like a kind of like a dungeon, I guess, you're going through. There's some like very light puzzle solving.
Yeah.
And one of the things, and again, I don't remember if this is like something mentioned in the first game, but it's this idea of like the structure of Midgar, right? So you have It's a circular city, so you have the upper levels where it's, the rich people live, right? And
It's a
then
pizza.
yeah, it's a pizza. You have the slums. But one thing that like they mention in this part is that they're under the panels, like above the slums, they have these like lighting solar panels going on.
Yeah.
And that's how they provide light to the slums, because it's like, well, yeah, like, if they didn't, it would just be dark all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember, like, I don't know if you do, like, in the original, if there's any mention of that. Because if not, like, it felt again like this really like interesting, very tiny, just like added detail of like, this is how this works. Like, this city is kind of weird, but this is like us explaining like just the minutia of like how this fits and works all together.
Yeah, and I don't recall any of that either. And I think even through just gameplay perspective, just like looking up and just being like, whoa, like here's the plate. Yeah. And even when you're on that scaffolding kind of, where the lights are at, just looking down and just seeing like all of the city below.
And it is,
I think that was like just a reason to talk about that a little bit.
For sure. And the texture stuff in this game, the one like the stuff that doesn't load, the weird like skyboxes and I guess ground boxes, I don't know what to call them.
There was a skybox that I saw later on. It's like chapter 14 or 15 that it was like,
I think it's 15. Yeah, and like I'll be honest, a lot of that stuff really didn't bother me that much. Yeah. And especially the chapter 15 stuff was like really bad because it's when you're ascending, like you're going up to the plates again, above the plates. So that part specifically is really bad about it.
Yeah.
And like by the time I saw it, I had already like seen so many people talk about it that I think by the point I got to it, I just kind of laughed and was like, yeah, that's funny. But it is a little bit of a bummer, right? Like especially in that sequence where you're the leading up to the next reactor and you're with Cloud Barrett Tifa and you're like in the scaffolding looking down and it's all just like a flat JPEG image basically.
Yeah.
It definitely would have been cool if like that looked better. Like I think it would have been a little bit more impactful, but I also like it didn't bother me that much.
Yeah.
So you go through, you get to the reactor. One thing that's really cool about this reactor that I haven't really thought that much about is the way that you customize the boss fight.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you feel about this, like just in general?
So I thought there was going to be enough key cards to like maybe get rid of all of and the boss is the Airbuster, which was kind of weird how they built up the Airbuster, because I was like, man, we're taking down these like other giant robots just for these, and it's like, what's the difference of like this giant robot? Like, why is this one so much more of a hassle than the other ones? But yeah, like you can I guess playing it through only like one time, you don't really like know like what you really have done. Like you're like, oh, you decreased the amount of bombs it has.
Yeah.
But like you don't really get to see that. Like you don't get to see, at least from my remembrance, like there's not a point that's like, oh, I'm trying to fire these bombs, but like, oh, I can't. Kind of, you know what I mean? So it just still kind of felt like a normal fight to me.
I remember seeing but like as I was reading impressions, and it was before I reached this point in the game, I remember someone comparing the boss fights in this to like MMO boss fights, where and I think maybe part of it is like these are enemies that like very clearly show the area of effect of their attacks. So if they're attacking in a straight line, you see that line in the games, you know where you need to be standing. And so there's that element of like, all right, I've got my party. Each party member has their like own specific thing. You know, one's range, one's close, one's like a martial arts, or one's magic or whatever. Yeah. And I'm fighting this boss, and the boss does like a very huge circular area attack, so I know to pull everyone back. You know, and then they have a straight line, so we're gonna move everyone to the side. And like I thought that was like a really interesting comparison. And then I got to this boss, and what I really enjoyed about it is like they give you a little bit of a clue of like this. The thing you're removing does this without like telling you exactly what it is. But it was enough for me to be like, yeah, this is really cool. You know, I could, if I wanted to challenge myself, I could just not do this.
Yeah. and that's actually, we're talking about trophies a lot. I thought that was going to be a trophy of like defeat the airbuster with like no.
It totally could be one, right?
Like
it probably should. It probably should be one. Like, glad it's not. Because even then, I still like actually. I think the boss fight took me like 2 or 3 tries.
Okay.
But it was. I really enjoyed like working my way through that reactor and trying to figure out like what are the things that I would rather not have to deal with rather, like what are the things that I'm okay dealing with, what are the things I'm not, and that was a lot of fun. I like really enjoyed that part. And then the boss fight itself, did you have any trouble with this fight?
I had a little bit of trouble, but then once I was able to like summon Ifrit, it really wasn't that much of a hassle.
Cool.
So yeah, and so going back just a tiny bit, when you can do that gate or the button sequence to unlock and pick up those parts, what did that do? Like, do you have that in your inventory? Like, unless I'm just really dumb, but like, what do you do with those parts that you picked up?
So there was a trophy tied to it,
right? And I think I got it.
The parts, I think it gives you items or materials.
Okay.
I don't remember. I wish I remembered to tell you.
Okay.
Because I definitely did it. Like I was like, I'm gonna try and platinum this. I'm gonna do this.
Yep.
I think it gave you items, but I don't remember what. Okay. And I think it was like items like it was specific to what parts they were.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I don't remember. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all right. But I didn't have much trouble with it. It was pretty straightforward. You're kind of on a more you didn't have much room to move around because it was like on that scaffolding kind of thing. So like we do meet the Shinra president. Do you know the voice actor for the Shinra president?
I don't.
I don't know who that is, but I'm pretty sure that's the Skullface actor from MGS5. If you think about it again, I start hearing that voice and it's like there's something, and I'm just like, this is the Skullface actor from MGS5.
I have to look it up. We'll look it up. Cool. So boss fight happens. Cloud takes a little bit of a tumble. Tumbles straight into chapter 8. Falls into the church where you meet Aerith again. And again, Collin, if I'm sounding like a broken record, it's these moments that are just like point for point the original game.
Yeah.
That just like, and maybe part of it is like, you're just remaking the original, and like that's a specific moment that people remember. There's probably an element of that, but man, like it's like the first conversation they have, like the first interaction when you meet her in chapter 2. It's like it's a really like cool interaction, right? But it's like when they meet in the church and they have that conversation. Again, it's just like the way Aerith like talks and treats Cloud. Like I love it. Like I feel like they just could not have done it better. But that does lead into the boss fight. Meet one of the Turks. This fight for me, like I think similar to Roche was like just another like really solid example that this combat system is really great in 1v1 fights.
Yeah. So the 1v1 fights, like, this being it is a video game.
Yeah.
But I'll say the cinematography.
Oh my god.
In this game is probably about the best I've ever seen, and that there are so many shots that like I wasn't fast enough to hit this like the screenshot button, like the share button, because I'm like, oh my gosh, there's like so many cool like almost like wallpaper-esque worthy moments in here, and especially that Reno fight where he just starts like flying around and stuff, and that ended up being the one where I was trying to kind of just brute force it again, but like he is just like countering everything and just whacking you like crazy, and you're like, okay, like I actually need to start like blocking now to counter him and stuff like that. So
yeah, that fight was so much fun. I even like the way they like it was a little clunky, but in the original game, like you have to escape from them in the church, and you're like climbing up rafters and doing all and dropping like barrels or something to help Aerith escape. The way they handled this was very slightly different. and it was a little clunky, like doing the monkey bars, right? But I even enjoyed that, and like that was again like another sequence where like the whispers show up briefly, and you're like, all right, what's going on here? One thing I want to add that you mentioned, like with the cinematography, this isn't new to Final Fantasy VII Remake. This like concept of spinning the camera around and suddenly you're playing it. We've been seeing that since like the last generation of consoles, right?
Yeah.
But man, just something about the way they do it in this game.
Yeah.
It's just like it's constant, right? Like it's every single time.
Yeah.
They make a point to do it, and every time it works. Every time it's just like, man.
Right.
I'm playing it. I'm living this. Like this is real.
So I don't remember if it's after the Reno fight or before when you meet Aerith, but there's the part where Cloud has the flashback, and that is what I call the Life is Strange moment, where I literally just put down my controller and just walked away. I'm just like, oh my gosh, that scene of with the materia bouncing.
Yeah.
Just alluding to her death. I was just like, oh my gosh. Like, I just had to leave. I was just like, I can't do this right now.
So I'm curious what your thoughts, like, if you remember what you were thinking at this moment. One thing I like to do is, like, try and figure out, like, okay, where was I at this point? Because, like, reviews had come out for this game. They were generally very positive, which is awesome. Like, I was not expecting that. And, like, that, going into this game made me, like, feel better. Because I'm like, yeah, okay, they did it. Like, yeah. And obviously, like at this point, I had understood that there was the end of this game would be crazy. Yeah. There was gonna be crazy stuff. And I was like, okay. And so like part of me playing through this game was trying to figure out like what is it? Like what are they doing? And when I saw when the flashbacks start, right, and you see like that specific one you just mentioned, at least for me, it was definitely a moment for me of like she's gonna live.
Oh, okay.
This is what I was like. I was convinced at that moment, and I've changed my mind since then. But at that moment, I was like, she's gonna live. Like they're actually gonna save her, and like maybe someone else will die in her place or something. Like that was kind of where my head was at that moment.
Yeah, in that moment, I guess I thought like that was gonna be it. Like we weren't gonna get anything else that was gonna allude to her maybe dying. Like that, like you know what I mean? Like that was gonna be like the one.
Yeah.
Thing, but certainly we get that and more.
And I think
later on,
I'll mention this later too. But one of like the things that I've thought about a lot since finishing this game is, a lot of times remakes are situated in such a way that it's like, oh no, you can jump into this one. You don't need to play the original. Like that's what they're remaking it for. It's like for new fans as well. Like new people can try it out. This is like maybe the one remake where I genuinely feel that you should not play this if you've not played the original.
When I beat the game, I was like, this is the Metal Gear Solid 4 of like Final Fantasy. Like,
sure.
Like if you just played Final Fantasy VII Remake and didn't know the original, you're like, what is going on? Yeah. Like, I don't understand this. I would absolutely recommend like you need to play the original before you play this. And
and we'll get into it, right? Like there's so many reasons for why that's the case. Despite the majority of this game just being a retelling of the first, 10 or so hours of the game, of the original, like, there's like a very, it's almost like you're watching a commentary track of a movie. Like, you don't watch that the first time you watch the movie. You watch it the second time, because then you have the context of what they're talking about.
That's a really good point about it being like a commentary track.
Yeah.
This game of like the original. That's really good.
Oh, thanks. That's literally just made it up. So I
was like, that's
but saying it, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Cool. So you meet Aerith, you escape from the church, you like go back to her home, and again, it's like we were talking about games like playing through them a second time, and like certain parts that you're like, this is dragging, and then others not. Like I think a lot of this game is like, I don't know how well suited it is to multiple playthroughs. Because you have just a lot of downtime, right? Like, and downtime, that's fine. Like, that's great character moments. But like when you're running back from the church to Aerith's home, like there's not a lot going on. You're just like they're just talking. But it's again like like I've hammered on so many times already, is just like the interactions between these two characters it's so great.
Yeah. I can't really remember any. I have more more memories of when they're in that like destroyed highway.
Yeah.
Later on, like chapter 8 or like chapter 9.
Yeah.
But yeah, like even just it's just being. It's that I don't want to call Last of Us dialogue, but it's like the just being together and playing the game and also hearing that dialogue as it's happening and reacting to things that are going on is really great.
Awesome. And I do want to like skip ahead a little bit. One last thing in chapter 8 I wanted to talk about is the boss fight. Is it? So I'm blanking on this. So it's Reno, and is it Rude or Rufus or?
Rude is after. Is the second one. Yeah, because you fight him in that like pit kind of thing.
Yeah, there's like a weird like arena next to Aerith's house.
Yeah, that you only go in it like 2 times, like one for a side quest and then one for that fight.
Did you fight the Tonberry?
I did, and it's just like, oh, this is obviously like a joke side quest where he's just gonna sit there, and then it's just he stabs Cloud, and it's just like, whoa, he can one shot you.
Yeah, I beat that fight on my first try, but it was a close one. It was a nail biter.
Yeah.
Colin, how good is the boss fight here? Like in this chapter, like 1v1 fights, like I feel like this combat excels, but to me it's the moment where his glasses break.
Yeah, and he puts on a new pair.
He just pulls another pair out.
Yeah. I really also enjoyed the I guess there's another one, but like there was the part where he picks up Cloud and literally just like spins him around Super Mario 64 style and just throws him into Aerith. Apparently there's also apparently I was listening to the MinMax show. They were talking about it in one of their things where I guess like if you run up to Rude with Aerith, he like takes the staff and like pushes her away with it or something like that.
Okay.
Like that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I just him as a character, really. Like, and there's some more stuff in like chapter 12 with him, right? Like some of his like hesitance towards like some of the actions that they're doing.
Yeah.
As Turks, but like, man, that there are many moments of this game that we'll never forget, but one of them is absolutely just watching him pull another pair of shades out. Like that is you're talking about Metal Gear Solid stuff. That's peak Metal Gear right there.
I love the Turks theme. It was like I guess in the original, but just like that beginning, that like if I had like some like baseball walk up music to the plate, like that's what I want my walk up music to be. It's just like it's like awesome. I was like, I love that theme.
All right, and Colin coming in as pitch hitter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's it? He's calling his shot.
Yeah. He has a baton. He's got an extra pair of shades in his back pocket.
I think there are nails sticking out of the bat. Like,
yeah.
So fast forward to chapter 9. Talked about like the going through the highway. Colin, I want to like ask you because I honestly don't remember. I know we've probably talked about this, and I've probably tried to get you to play Yakuza games. Have you? One. Okay. How have you like finished any Yakuza games, or like which ones have you played? Okay.
Kiwami is the only one I've played and finished.
Okay.
Fantastic. I want to get to some of the others, like
you should
Kiwami
absolutely
2
play
Zero.
Yeah.
But obviously so many games, but I've heard a lot of Yakuza comparisons, and I absolutely agree with them.
How are we so lucky?
Yeah, it is like 9. Walking around Kamurocho.
Yeah,
with a wall market.
So I need to go back to Kiwami one day. I never finished it. I'm like I only played a few hours, but I love Yakuza 0 to death. Like it's the story and characters of that game are maybe some of my favorites of the past several years. But I don't remember if you and I ever talked about this that much. But I know after they announced the remake, I know one of the like hot button topics people would talk about is like, all right, so how are they going to handle the cross dressing here? Like, are they like people talked about like they're just going to cut it, like they won't have it, like they can't have it now, like that just won't fly. I love how much they leaned into it. I love that they just went for it.
They did.
And like of all the parts of this game that like I really think they did super well and nailed, like chapter 9 is just like up like a head above the rest. It feels like to me like it's a very long chapter, and when I talk about chapter 9, I'm probably mostly talking about the last half of it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a Yakuza game.
Yeah.
That chapter is just Yakuza.
Yeah. And even like right before you do that, I do kind of actually just want to touch on the end of chapter 8 with chapter 9 being like Elmira, her mom being like, don't.
Oh yeah.
Don't.
No, we should.
Yeah. Talk to her. And, I just remember like, just like, obviously you knew like you're going to see her again, like Aerith,
right.
But like, it was just like that really sadness. Like I felt like that sadness. I was like, man, like I'm saying goodbye. I'm not supposed to talk to her. Yeah. And then just like seeing her like just pop out of like one of the things like later on was fan. Like I was just like, oh my god, like it almost feels like you're on borrowed time kind of thing. Like
it totally does. And I think borrowed time is probably the best way to put it. It's totally like, because right? Like there's so much of this game. Mm-hmm. And there's something specific I really like that really hit me hard that I think comes in chapter 13, at the end of 13. But it's because like there are things that people say that are like otherwise throwaway lines, but because like what is coming, or like what Destiny has in store for these characters to like again, maybe no pun intended on that one either, but what's in store for Aerith and Cloud, like, and so for her adopted mother to say that, like, it has a lot more weight in it.
Yeah.
And for sure.
And even Cloud's just like, yeah, I got it. Like, that really, that great line that Elmira has basically saying, like, you gave up this life when you became a soldier.
Yeah.
And like, that was just like, wow. And just Cloud's just immediate, like, yep, I understand. Like, I agree.
That's what I love too about Cloud's characterization in this game. Like, there's so much time from the first game that like Advent Children's come out. There's like, there's Cloud in Kingdom Hearts, and like that in and of itself is like a character that, like that's a part of Cloud's character. And his like trajectory as a person and his like attitude and the way he like views things. I feel like it's been distorted a lot. I feel like a lot of people are like, yeah, Cloud's just like a brooding guy and like doesn't, doesn't care. But he had like so much character in the original game, right? Like there's a lot more to him. There's depth. There's a lot of layers there. And I was really happy to see, at least like in this part so far, like I feel like they've, in this part of the story, like this is who Cloud is. Like it is, like he's not one for words. Like he's not one to talk a lot and doesn't care too much about other people, at least at the start. But like, he's in it for money, but also, like you do see a very like almost pragmatic version of him where he's like, yeah, no, don't worry, I got it, like totally, like to a lot of things where he's just like, you're good.
And then there's the moment where they're on top of the slide afterwards, where I don't recall this too much. I remember them being up on the slide, but then Aerith saying like, oh, the first person I fell in love with was also in Soldier First Class. And then it was like, oh, well, I probably know him. What's his name? And then it like zips out and you don't hear what Aerith says. Like, was that?
I believe that's in the original.
Okay.
And obviously there's no voice acting, but I'm pretty sure there's like, it's like the text is just like missing or like distorted or something.
And fast forwarding, are we under the assumption that she says the name Zach?
I think so. I believe that's always what's been implied.
Okay, that's what I just want to make sure that I was on the same page with that.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, then eventually you run into Tifa, and then that's she's gonna go to Don Corneo's place, and that's what starts Wall Market. So
I mean, so there's so many. I guess there's like so much stuff, and we could probably spend forever talking about Wall Market, but we shouldn't. Right?
Yeah.
I just like. Give me like 3 highlights. Like what are your big, like, if you're talking about Wall Market, like these were the things that I'll remember.
I like the running, kind of talking about Johnny again. I guess it's a side quest, but I liked running around with Johnny. That felt like
Yeah.
the most Yakuza to me,
Hmm.
where it's like, we're going to this inn, we can stay the night, and now we're going to this place to eat. And like, it's like we're just running around all over the place. I liked that. Um, Kind of it's in this chapter and the one 14,
Hmm.
doing the squats and the pull-ups.
Yeah.
The I got both of the trophies for him. The pull-ups with Tifa later on is a pain in the butt.
It took me a handful of times on that one for sure.
So the way I ended up doing, because like you beat all three of them.
Yeah.
So I was not doing well at all. Like I could barely even beat the first guy, whoever the Andrea,
Hmm.
and I was like searching it up on like YouTube, just being like, I gotta have like a tip here. And actually, someone said go into the options and turn down the voice acting and the music volume to 0, but then only leave the sound effects volume all the way up. So all you're hearing are the sound effects. And I literally beat it second try.
Nice.
after doing that. So that helps so much.
I was very like happy, I guess, with myself because it's another. I don't know if you do this either, but I often find myself like reading like forum threads as I'm playing through a game. So like, especially if it's a new release, like I'll have like my laptop next to me or something, and I'll like read a page of the thread and kind of see what people are thinking as I'm playing through.
Yeah.
I do that relatively often. And so I like, it's one of the mini things where it's like, oh yeah, all right, here's the pull-up stuff and the squats. Like people have been saying it's hard. And then I did it like pretty easily, except for the Tifa stuff. Like the Tifa trophy, the final one, it took me several tries for that one. But all the other ones, I was like, yeah, like I've got this. I'm good. Maybe it was the Animal Crossing and me. I've been playing a lot of that and needing some quick fishing. Fishing like reactions for that. So.
And then there's the Coliseum, like is in a Yakuza game. And,
yep.
I love with the Coliseum that you go into that room like after a battle you just fought, and you just see like the person you just beat there. Just like I think you see Johnny, but then like the fun one is when you beat Chocobo Sam's robots, and you walk in there and he's just piled up in the corner. I thought that was really funny.
It's great, like because like you have to do it too. I think like it's like your like objective marker moves to that room, so you have to like walk in there and see them.
It's a good one.
So those are great. Like like Coliseum. Like I love any like one of my favorite part of Dragon Quest XI is like the whole tournament arc. Is any Coliseum in any game. Just yes, every game should have a Coliseum or tournament or something. I love that.
Did you? So this is one of the things that can be missed. I didn't miss it, but did you find the gal from the orphanage as one of the honeybees?
No, either no, or I just wasn't paying attention enough to realize it was her.
Yeah, it was. She was in one of the back alleys by the Honeybee Inn. It's like having a cigarette or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, you just meet her earlier the chapter before with the I guess it was the Leaf orphanage, and you see her like at night doing it, and she's like, please don't tell the kids that I do this. That's just something that you can completely miss.
So all those parts for sure. I'm trying to remember if there's anything else that like really stuck out to me other than the big thing.
There's the even like I guess it's from the original, but that little like the thing with the machine gun that shoots at you. You walk in there and you like hit the button, and it's just like oh, this isn't working, and then it like shoots a little machine gun at you. You saw that at all?
I vaguely remember that. One thing I will appreciate, like we kind of brought it up a little bit before, like as annoying as it is to have to get 9 dresses for the trophy, like I really like that they just leaned into it. Like they put the effort in to design all these different dresses. I like that, because it's something that was in Final Fantasy VII, this idea of like choice. And like a lot of games do like choice right, but they make it very apparent when choices matter. And I think in some respects it makes it less impactful when you see the resolution of your choice. Yeah. In this game, like if you weren't looking up a guide or anything, you probably have no clue. Or if you didn't look at the trophies, like I would never would I don't like I certainly didn't think in chapter 3 that the choice I made would have impacted the dress I had in chapter 9. Like,
yeah, about what Tifa's gonna wear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, for like on multiple playthroughs and getting the other dresses, it's kind of like annoying to go through that stuff. But like, I like that. Like, I like that that's present, and I like that they don't really draw too much attention to it.
Yeah, and how much you pay for the hand massage or whatever it was from Madam M.
And we'll get to it, but there's like a few different scenes that you can get, I think, at the end of chapter 13. That, again, it's like the impact of that is pretty well hit, or like the way that you do that is
I know
pretty well hidden, right?
Yep.
And then, so obviously, and the major thing, like the thing that just floored me, is the culmination of chapter 9, the like dance number.
I loved it.
Is
so good.
So
good.
I don't know. A genuine question for you, for as far as Yakuza is concerned. Because again, I only played a couple hours of Kiwami.
I played karaoke.
Is Majima in Kiwami at all?
Yeah, Majima's pretty prominent in Kiwami.
Cool. So Yakuza 0, so it's prequel to Kiwami, right? First in the timeline. You're playing as Kazuma, and then a few chapters in, you play as Kazuma and Majima. And a few chapters in, you're introduced to Majima. And Collin, it is maybe the greatest character introduction scene in a video game.
Oh, is this what Wario 64 always posts when Yakuza 0's on sale, and it's maybe them like on the dance floor?
No, that's just like a side quest.
Oh, okay.
Majima's introduction, like in that game, is he's running, like a very like highbrow like restaurant or like club, right? And that's like his introduction scene is like pretty lengthy, if I remember correctly. And it is like, you just talk about like character, like just confidence, right? Like he's just this guy who like walks in the room and everyone turns, like he owns the room and everyone's attention, and he just owns that scene. And it is like everything, like it's rare that you like are introduced to a character and are so immediately like, that guy is the best. Like I want to know everything about him. I want this game to be just his game now. But this sequence, this like crazy dance number, really reminded me a lot of that scene, because it was ridiculous, it was over the top, but it was so confident in its execution that like nothing mattered. It didn't matter how insane it was that Cloud is just sitting like just up there dancing with this guy. It didn't matter that it was just a rhythm mini game. Like none of that mattered, because because they just didn't care. They were just like, we're just gonna do it. We're gonna lean into it as heavy as we can. Yeah. Like it's so fun, and something I feel like you don't see, especially in a game like this, like a huge big budget game that's like pretty serious, right? Like you don't see that kind of just tonal like abandonment of all everything leading before it, and I love it. Forever.
Yeah, did you have any trouble with any of the button presses?
No, but I wonder if the game was fudging it a bit for me. I don't know.
I didn't really. I missed some. The camera would cut at several points where like, you'd have like the square button, and then like there's the little light that flies into it, and you press square when that happens. But sometimes like the camera would move and cut, and I was like, I can't really tell how close the light is to the square thing. So I'm like, oh, do I press it?
I didn't care for like the UI of the mini game. There was like one thing I could complain about, right? Like it's a very like 3-dimensional movement of letters and like in button shapes, right? And like I got it, like, and I guess there's a trophy tied to it, and I got that. I don't know how lenient that is. So it was nice to be like, all right, but it definitely felt like, I don't know. I honestly thought the game might have just been fudging the numbers for me in my favor, because I didn't feel like I was that accurate. Yeah. But I'll take it.
Yeah. I immediately, like, I tried not to get spoiled, but I immediately, for future stuff, I immediately just went and rewatched that thing on YouTube. I was like, I had that playing several times. It's kind of just want to go watch it again. Like, it's one of those moments that like everybody's talking about the ending and everybody's talking about some of those other things. Like, nobody's talking about this dance sequence that's incredible in this game, I feel like.
Yeah, I guess we'll talk about it towards the end, but I feel like there's just enough here, right? Like, regardless of thoughts on like the last hour of this game, specifically the last hour, like there's so much else here that is so well done and just hits the mark over and over again. That like, I feel like a lot of this game weirdly was like about building confidence and making the case for this project, right? Like, it felt like so much of this, at least for me, was just like, listen, we need you as fans to trust us. And like, it was feel like this was like them just like making their case.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes not successful, sometimes successfully, but like, yeah. So that happens. You end up meeting up with Don Corneo, and there's, stuff like that. There's I don't know, I'm pretty sure this is the case, but when they're all in the room together and he's like on the bed just like slobbering over them basically, there's like, I don't remember the specific quote, maybe you do better than I do. There's like Tifa, Aerith, and Cloud like together, like they're like, I'll rip him off, I'll cut him off, whatever. I'm pretty sure that's like word for word from the original.
I think so too. That's what I've heard.
Yeah. So that leads into chapter 10, which is the sewers. He drops them into like just in a pit, basically. You fall into the sewers and it immediately triggers a boss fight. Is it like Abzu was the name of the monster?
I think it is Abzu. I think that he's like a blue monster.
Did you have any trouble with this guy at all?
I did not. No, I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't have any trouble. Again, I'm on easy and just
right. He took me a few tries. Like it definitely caught me off guard. I'm not sure why. Like, just the first time you fight him, he caught me off guard a bit, and like it took me I fought him once, kind of got wrecked, and I was like, all right, I'm coming back to this tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Important question though. Who did you wake up first?
Oh yeah, Tifa.
Okay, I did Aerith.
So I didn't,
like,
and I think that actually has an impact on something later, but I didn't realize
I think so. Yeah.
At the time. I
think so.
I don't remember. There's a few things. I don't remember if it's an impact on the final boss or if it's something else. But anyways, yeah, I didn't. Again, it was. I appreciate that the game did not say like, all right, which one you gonna wake up first. It was just you just naturally
you just
did
walk.
It.
This action has consequences.
Yeah, there's
Aerith
none of
will
that.
remember
like,
that. Yeah,
it makes it more impactful.
Yeah,
I love that. So, I don't remember the sewers and train graveyard. Like, there's probably more story like stuff in the train graveyard. I don't remember if there was much in the sewers that like happened story-wise that we need to cover.
Not really. Yeah, just fighting those like turtle lizard enemies that kind of got tough after a while. I don't really think of anything else, but yeah, mostly the haunted chapter where you kind of find the ghosts and just kind of fast forwarding towards the end of that, but you see like Marlene in a vision with Tifa. Is that like, I didn't know if that was supposed to allude that like Marlene also is someone who has like connected powers or something.
I don't remember. I don't know if I remember enough of the vision to know for sure.
Okay.
One thing, and we can like skipping it into train graveyard. One, I like the two bosses in this chapter. Like the design of them, I liked fighting them. I don't know why this is the case. It was just a thought I had as like I was reaching the end of the train graveyard chapter. Is that like it felt like an episode of an anime. Like, and I don't know why that was the thought I had. It was just like it felt like some people have been referring to it as like a filler chapter, which I don't know if I agree with entirely, but like it felt like it just felt like its own episode of an anime. Like, which I guess is like a filler chapter. But one thing that we didn't mention before the sewers is Don Corneo lets us know that Shinra's up to no good, that they're planning on dropping the plates and blaming it on Avalanche. over Sector 7, I believe. Right?
Yeah.
7?
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. So Train Graveyard happens. It's kind of lengthy. It's a pretty long chapter, actually.
Yeah, it is. And I don't, and again, I don't know if and you use the word filler, but like if padding is the right word, but like,
Sure.
I just kind of know that like not really anything substantial happens, and it's like, okay, can we just kind of move on a little bit? But
well, I'm a sucker for ghost stuff, so I'm like, yeah, sign me up. I'm on board.
Yeah, and this is also kind of one of those also moments where I'm just like, yep, I'm gonna have to play through all this again on hard. Like, you know, I was wanting to get there.
Yeah. So let's talk about chapter 12.
Okay.
This chapter, again, right out of the original game, Avalanche is intending to drop the plates over Sector 7, which is, would destroy, or Shinra, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. Very different context there. So Shinra's intending to drop the plates. Avalanche, Barrett, like everyone, they want to stop it. And so Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith were racing back, trying to help. We get back. Wedge falls. You're climbing this tower. Like it's a race to the top of the tower to try and stop them from activating the plates, like to fall, basically. In the original game, it is this is the moment in which Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse die.
Yep. Where you each kind of get their own like little send-offs. Like after you come across Wedge, he ends up being okay. I don't know when it is eventually that I think it's like right there they tell Aerith to go find Marlene.
Yeah.
Then eventually Wedge kind of gets up and feels a little bit better. I think
Cloud rushes up the tower like alone, tells Tifa and Aerith to stay back.
Yeah. So the first one you come across is Biggs, and he's not doing too well. I thought his kind of death was a little weird, where like there was a couple times I thought he was dead and just like stopped talking, and then he just starts talking again. I thought that was kind of weird. It's like, oh no, we're still going. But I don't know if we want to get into it right here, but I felt like I've been saying the entire time I don't think they were dead. Because the Dementor things were around them at points before and after the plate fell. So I even when they were dying, I was like, I don't think they're dead. Like, I just don't think they're dead yet.
The Wedge thing like is a pretty apparent like, oh he's safe. He'll be okay. The Biggs and Jesse, like, at least, so in this moment, right, like, as far as I'm concerned, those two characters died at this specific moment in time of the game. Obviously things change, but like, so I didn't really think much of it, right? And it made it was sad, like, right? We got to know these characters more. Like, Jesse was more of a character. I was like, yeah, that really sucks. Like, it's a bummer. But then also it's like it's still a race against time, so you don't have a lot of time to think about it.
Yeah.
So Cloud and Tifa get up to the top and they meet up with Barrett. There's another boss fight with Reno, and then becomes like a dull like two boss fight with Reno and Rude. Again, I love like them in the helicopter, and like just their interaction, but also their like the way they're perceiving what is happening and what they're doing.
Yeah.
Again, just like going a long way to like flesh out who these people are.
So I didn't remember this, but people talk about the moment that alludes to Rude liking Tifa, where Tifa starts running up the pillar, and then right as Reno's about to shoot her, Rude moves the helicopter to throw off his aim.
I didn't really think of it much as like something pertaining to Tifa, but it felt more just like, here's someone who's really questioning the commands they've been given.
That's what I wondered too, or if like he was maybe some Avalanche plant or something like that, or
he's just a cool dude.
Yeah,
just wearing a bunch of sunglasses
at night in a helicopter,
a few extra in his pockets whenever he needs them.
Yep.
So that boss fight happens. They are not successful in preventing the plates from falling.
So it kind of upset me a little bit because it did the trope of, hey, you win the boss fight, but then you still end up losing in the story perspective. I think this is about the time, and the Minimax people called it about chapter 8, that I wasn't like, okay, like that sounds great, but this is really where I started to believe that the ghosts or the whispers are trying to make sure the events of the original game happen.
Yeah.
That I'm like, we won, but then they're getting in the way to make sure the plate fell still.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and what's interesting, and I think, I don't know if it was like this moment or like when I can't, I'm not sure. I don't remember the specific moment where I like reached that like perspective, right? And I think for a lot of the game, my focus really was like Aerith, right? It was like, was her fate.
Yeah.
And I think the reason for that is, right, like, long had there been rumors that in the original game you could exploit the game and you could bring her back, and like those are proven false, right? But there's been all this talk about that specific moment, and it's such like a huge moment of just video game stories, like one of the great spoilers of our time. And so a lot of my focus because of that, I think, was heavily weighted towards like, is like that would be the thing that they would change if they change anything. And so like trying to like weigh one way or the other, like, is this going this way, is this going that way? And yeah, so I don't know. But with like, and then like Wedge surviving, right? I was like, okay. I was like, that's interesting. Like, okay, like that's different. That is like, and in the original game, like when I was playing it and they died, I was like, oh, that's a bummer. I didn't really get to meet them that much.
Yeah. And
then you kind of forget about them. Whereas this game, it's definitely building it up as like, oh, that's a loss. Like, that sucks. So chapter 13 is kind of a mixture of like, there's sorting through the wreckage. You actually go to, there was like a lot of talk earlier in the game about this underground Shinra lab. So you go there. There's actually a decent chunk of it you're just playing as Barrett, and then you end up meeting up with Tifa. You find Wedge. He's like fallen into the ground. There's like all kinds of stuff going on. There are like secret Shinra experiments.
Yeah.
That you fight. I'm trying to think.
One of my favorite cool cinematography moments of the game is when you reunite with Tifa and Barrett, and Tifa like is on the second floor platform trying to like close this vent or something like that. Yeah. And the platform gets hit. She falls off the platform, and like Barrett catches her with like his one hand and like throws her back up there. I was like, oh, it's so cool.
It's good.
I was just like, man, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I was really happy with that. It's just great moments.
So I don't remember like too much about how the lab wraps up. You end up you meet back up with Cloud.
Yeah.
And
so
let me know if I'm.
Oh, sorry.
Or go ahead.
I was gonna say, Cloud comes in and delivers the final blow to the big monster, and then you end up finding that, hey, here's all these test subjects. Cloud has a little crazy flashback, and with nothing, but then all of the whispers come and basically flush all four of you out of the lab, and like that's just it. Like, you don't really know why they did that, or maybe they were trying to show like, hey, you don't know, you're not supposed to know these things yet. I'm not sure. But I think that's the first time Hojo, that son of a bitch Hojo, I think that's the first time Cloud says his name in the game.
Yeah. So chapter 13, let me know if I'm skipping anything important, but the end of chapter 13 is the wreckage happens. Barrett's worried about Marlene. And you're like, no, we sent Aerith to save her. Like, the other thing I guess we skipped over before the plate falls. It's revealed that Aerith has been captured by Shinra. Yeah, and there's like that
maybe however you say that name. Tseng, Tseng, I think is how you spell it.
Yeah. And he has that like that line of like, oh, you've brought the ancient back to us. And so again, like, it's like setting the seed of like, oh, I don't remember how early in the original game like that information is brought to light. I feel like it's later. I think this is actually a bit earlier, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't remember.
So you let Barrett, they tell Barrett, like, hey, no, like, she's safe. Marlene's safe. So you go to Aerith's house, which is where Marlene is. So there's, like, a nice, like, moment between her and Barrett. But that night, Cloud wakes up, and you go outside. Collin, who was waiting for you outside of Aerith's house?
Aerith.
Okay. Me as well.
Okay.
What is... Yep. I don't know. I have not gone back and watched the scene with Tifa and Barrett. So I don't know what is said in those scenes. If it's, like, just as important or what they say. But Aerith is... I guess for us, we got that scene based on some choices. I'm not sure which ones.
Yeah.
And... she's like a vision, I guess, or like I don't like she's not like actually there, or it's unclear like what's going on. But Aerith says quite a few things to Cloud. One like kind of basically saying like, hey, you can't fall in love with me. Everyone dies at some point. Like you gotta keep your distance.
Do I get a say in all of this?
Yeah.
What a great line by Cloud.
Yeah.
It's great.
So, Collin, this was the moment in time for me, this specific moment. Like, this scene happened. It's kind of crazy that this scene is potentially missable for a lot of people, depending on whatever choices you make. This was the scene for me where I was like, no, they aren't, this is something they're not changing. Like, she will die.
Yeah. I
firmly believe, I feel like the conversation is over. Like, it is going to happen. I will be shocked at this point. Like, I will be... if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. In 5 years, in 3 years, or whatever. Like,
yeah.
This was a scene that, like, cemented it for me. I was like, yeah. Like, and I think it's not only that, and we'll kind of get into this as we get to the end of the game, like I think she knows.
Yeah, for sure.
Is like, I think, like, a crux of this game is that Aerith, like, whatever version of her is, like, present in this remake, like, it feels very apparent to me that she... fully knows what is going to happen. And I don't think those words were like, I think those words were very specifically said to say like, hey, like a wink and a nod of like, I know what's going to come. It's not pretty. So like, keep your distance because it will hurt less. Like that was that scene. Like,
yeah. It's definitely one of the ones I really loved in it. Yeah, I do want to go back and see what happens if with Barrett and Tifa in that scene. But yeah, I wonder what the certain circumstances are. Maybe it's like not completing some side quests, or I don't know.
I don't remember. But it's cool, right? And like in the original, it had the whole dating thing, like
the gold saucer.
And like I fully expect that to be in the next part or whatever part it is. Like so chapter 14, heavy, just like a lot of like, here's the final batch of side quests. Make sure it's the point, like right before the point of no return. There's some story stuff, right, where you're like, you have to go, you meet up with is it Jesse? What's his name? Don Corneo and
Leslie.
Yeah,
and you go in the sewers.
You go in the sewer, back through the sewers. There's like some more Leslie like plot stuff going on. A lot of like, I feel like a lot of it is just left hanging, saying like, hey, next part, like he's gonna be back. There's gonna be more Don Corneo stuff, probably with the golden saucer, I would imagine. So that stuff is cool. But a lot of just like cleaning up side quests, so we can kind of like go through that. The resolution of chapter 14 is that we get some like grappling hooks that are going to help us ascend, and we're heading to Shinra HQ. So we get to chapter 15. A lot of it's just ascension. I think it's like, I don't think there's a lot of story stuff. It's really just like ascending to the upper level of Midgar.
Yeah, it is.
There's a boss fight. So before, and then like that, chapter 16 like opens with the like iconic shot of Cloud stepping into view. The camera's behind him. It's tilted upwards. You see him like looking at Shinra Tower. Yeah. Before we get to that though, so like at this point we're entering into the final 3 chapters. Like this is we're in the end game moment for Final Fantasy VII. Before we get to that, Colin, I want to take a quick detour, and I want to talk about the reveal trailer for Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Yeah.
I watched this trailer like literally minutes before this game unlocked, and then I watched it again afterwards. We have talked about this trailer to death, probably more than we need to. One, because it's just a good trailer. Like for a reveal trailer for this game, it was like the writing was great. Like the direction of it was great. Everything was great about it.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is the first time a video game has made me like love a trailer more post beating that game. I specifically want to I want to just like mention this briefly and then like kind of go back to like, you know, getting through these chapters, these last few, because I feel like this trailer sets the stage in a way that none of us really saw coming. The reveal trailer is like a shot over Midgar. There was like some narration. A lot of it like at the time didn't really mean anything, right? But then there's the shot of like Cloud and Barrett walking, I guess away from the camera, and then we see like the logo, right? And everyone loses their minds.
Yeah.
But towards the end of the trailer, there's a line, and I'll paraphrase. It's something to the effect of like, you know, this reunion may bring joy, it may bring suffering, but whatever it brings, let us rejoice. Like, for they are coming back, and then it's like do 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 do. It's the theme, and you see Barrett and Cloud, and you get chills, and it's like, oh my god. But I keep thinking about that line because I just realized like that line is very much indicative of like what their vision for this remake project is. Like I think like sometime last year, as I'm just want to think about Final Fantasy VII and waiting for years for video games. Like I don't know if you had this feeling, but when I beat God of War, and when I beat Spider-Man, I was like, man, that was incredible. But especially with God of War, I was like thinking about what was next, and being kind of bummed out because I'm like, man, I'm gonna be like 34.
Yeah.
When that game comes out, or you know, like, and especially with Final Fantasy VII, like when this is all done, like it's gonna be like a decade probably. Like,
yeah, I'm
gonna be like a lot older, and you know, I'm like 29 now, so like whatever. But like at some point last year, I just like I think I was rewatching this reveal trailer and thinking like, you know what, like I'm just making peace with this. Like this is what's happening. Like it's just gonna take a long time, but that's okay. Like I'm just gonna be on for the ride.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's now taken on this other meaning of like, hey, we're gonna change things. Like we're remaking this game, and it's probably gonna follow most of the major plot points to a T.
Yeah.
But like, if we're gonna retell it, we want to do it in a way that matters. Like I think about a lot of people talk about like when you remake something or when you like do a live action version of a animated movie, like do it for a reason. And I think like the original Resident Evil, right? Like that game, they didn't just like slap a new pane of graphics on it, right? They made it matter.
Yeah.
They added really impactful things that like changed the game for the better. And I love that they're taking risk. Like what we're about to talk about, it's a major risk that they're taking. But I'm really like, yeah, maybe the comparison of like director's commentary is the best. It's the most apt because it's like, yeah, like if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do something. Like we're gonna make it matter. We're not just gonna retell the same story and call it a day. And I don't know. That's my soapbox on that.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and even like people were like posting the definition of the word remake, and like it doesn't mean 1-to-1, and
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. So.
Well, and again, it's like now this title is like taken on a whole other meaning, right? People are like, "Oh, of course it wasn't called Part 1 because the next part won't even be called Remake. It'll be called something else." So okay, Colin, take me away. Shinra HQ. Walk me through this.
So Shinra HQ, you get in the parking garage and you just kind of brute force your way through that. You do have a moment where you're trying to get a key card and you play as Tifa. It's not really like story related, but I found this area to be like really dumb and kind of tedious.
It was weird.
I don't know about you. There was like the part where like she just jumps forward and just completely just doesn't go for any of the lamps. She just falls down. I was like, well, aren't you supposed to jump to the one to the right? Like, this is the second time you have like the kind of monkey bars thing. You have that one earlier with in the church with Cloud. You have this with Tifa now. I just was like, why are we doing this? Whatnot. You kind of notice that like nobody's in the Shinra HQ. Like it's kind of like ominous. They talked about how they kind of have heightened security because of like, I think it's Cloud maybe says like maybe this isn't all for us. If it's like for Wutai or if it's for like for I thought maybe at that point they were going to say Sephiroth.
How have we not talked about the Wutai stuff yet?
So yeah, that's something I didn't really know too much about from the original, I guess. So if that makes sense.
And again, this is going off like it's been almost 5 years since I played the original. I think the Wutai stuff is entirely optional in the original game. So like characters like Yuffie and Vincent, like you might beat the game and never get them as characters. But one thing I think is very apparent is like that stuff probably won't be optional in future parts. Sure. Like that stuff will probably change or like be a mandatory part of the game. But what I love about the Wutai stuff is like, it's just build up. It's set up for something greater, and I hopefully the payoff is worth it. But I loved the angle of just like the little sprinkling of just stuff. Just like we're gonna like build this Wutai narrative, and like you're not gonna see any of this in this part. You're gonna have to wait, but we're gonna build it now. Like the if I butcher the name, I'm sorry, but the Ketchi stuff, right?
Yeah. We forgot to talk about that.
I'm ashamed that I forgot to bring this up, but at the end of chapter 12, when the plate falls, there's a shot of Ketchi like running, and like he stops and he like falls to his knees.
It's like pounding his fist.
And if you're I want to if you remember, there's when this game was first revealed at E3, there's like everyone and their mom made reaction videos. But probably one of the more prominent ones I think that you and I saw and talk about was the Easy Ally, or at that time Game Trailers one. I think about like Kyle Wasson, just like that quote of like, oh, Midgar looks exactly like that. When this happened, I like stood up and I was like, he looks exactly like that. Like I was like, that's him.
I love that. Like, I was able to be like, that's him. Like, you just knew like, that's who that was.
And I was so like, it made me happy too, because I remember like before this came out, would talk to people and be like, I bet one of these characters will like just a quick cameo. Like I was like, Yuffie she'll be in the back of a crowd or something. So I was happy to like see somebody just a quick one-off. For a while, I was like, I messaged my brother who like beat it, I think a couple of days before me, and I was like, does he come back? Is he gonna show up with Red 13 later in the game, or like what? He's just not, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it was exciting, and again, just like consistently nailing the character designs, just unheard of. Yeah. But so, Colin, did you take the stairs?
I took the stairs.
How great.
It got really slow towards the end.
I love, one of my favorite parts about this, like, one is, like, at the beginning, it's like, oh, this is so funny. Like, they did it. Like, put the stairs in. Haha. I love that they, like, on the UI, they added, like, the floors that each character was on, and, like, it would shuffle like a race. Oh, man. Yeah. Just so good.
I love it, like the banter between everybody.
Yeah.
When you're going up, it's great.
It's great. I don't remember, and I never tracked down the song that plays like after you get out of the stairs and you get back onto the floor, and there's like a vocalized song that plays, and I don't remember what it was, but it really reminded me a lot of Persona 5.
Oh, okay.
There's a little anecdote there. It was a good song. I just never looked it up afterwards. So yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff that happens from here on out for the rest of the game. I guess like to quickly breeze through it, and then we can kind of like maybe we get to like the top of Shinra like tower, and we can kind of like reconvene. From here on, there's you. Like, so the goal of this mission obviously is to save Aerith, and it's like Cloud's focus, right? But then there's like Barrett's also like, well, but we got to take down Shinra. Like, if we're here, we're gonna do it. So there's like a part where you're like eavesdropping in on a meeting with some like Shinra people, like the who's who of Shinra, right? Like Hojo's, like everyone's there, President's there, Hojo's there.
Just like the original, isn't it? Don't you go through a vent and? I
think so. I think it's like a pretty. I think it's pretty close, if not the same. So that happens. You end up meeting up with Hojo, and there's some stuff there. Hojo is very keen on having you do combat, so he can like extract data from that. You you rescue Aerith. Red 13. He's here. Not playable. But he's with you for a few hours in this game, right up to the end. Yeah. And again, I don't know if you have different feelings, but again, like I feel like just visually, like, love his design and the voice. I don't remember who's voicing him, but like again, like I just thought everything about Red 13 in the last few hours of this game. Loved. I think you mentioned earlier to me, like, or I don't remember, it's like last night I think you were like, yeah, Red 13 pulling the levers.
Yeah, it's like him like jumping on top of it and it just like thunk and it just coming down.
Just like his weight pulling it down.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm trying to think.
I liked the Red 13 inclusion for sure. Yeah. I'm fine with him not being playable. I could see him being playable in the next game.
Yeah.
My kind of thought is that they didn't want to introduce a brand new character with different systems and a level up and equipment and items.
Well, I think they said, I think they even said as much. They were like, it would only be for such a short a part of the game that they didn't want to put like they would rather dedicate resources to like the next game.
Right.
So I think it makes sense. I never gave it too much of a second thought.
And I guess he has his own attacks too that like shows up with attacks. He has his own like limit break at one point or something like that.
Yeah.
Or spells. Yeah, it's cool.
It'll be fun. It'll be interesting to see. Yeah, like so with this game we have 4 playable characters. The next game, Red 13 for sure. Like Yuffie probably.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember like at what point in the story some of these characters show up. So like Yuffie for sure.
Sid is pretty late, I think.
Sure, and I don't remember how late Vincent is. But I feel like it's a safe bet. Like Red 13, Yuffie, and I guess like Ketshi, right? Like
that's if Golden Saucer is in the next game. But I would say it probably.
And I also don't remember how far Golden Saucer is in the game. I think it's later.
Yeah, it's before Aerith dies. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Because you have that chance to date her or whatever in the Gold Saucer.
You're right. And I guess we'll talk about it, but it feels like that very well could be the spot where the next game ends.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I figure like it'll be cool to see like what are the next party members that like join in the next part, and if there's any. Or who, or if any, like are saved for part 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
One
moment I want to touch on real quick is with Hojo kind of interrogating Aerith.
Yeah.
And basically talking about that we grabbed your mom's remains and like inspected them and stuff. Like that was like one of the darker moments.
Hojo's like a
game.
Scumbag.
He really is. Yeah.
He's just straight scum.
And it's just like, oh my goodness. Like, and like, you can see Aerith, like, just trying to keep a straight face through all that. Like, trying not to show weakness, because it's like when he walks away, she kind of, like, releases a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I actually, like, you know, I mean, obviously, ultimately, like, Sephiroth is, like, the main, you know, him and Jenova are, like, main villains, right? But, like, I really like what they did with a lot of the Shinra, like, people, right? Like, Hojo being one, Heidegger as well, like, these are people that I feel like they really take advantage of, you know, being able to have, like, good graphics, voice work, like, maybe some more lines and parts of the story for them to, like, flesh them out a little bit more. Because, you know, like, we certainly have not seen the last of Hojo.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
like,
for sure.
He comes back.
Find him laying on the beach next game. In his lab coat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Cool. So, the Hojo stuff ends up being chapter 17. There's actually, like, that chapter is long. There's, like, his whole lab, and there's, like, crazy stuff going on. You're switching back between Cloud and Barrett, and Tifa and Aerith, and, like, Red 13's with you, and he kind of swaps places a couple times. Meanwhile, there's, like, Jenova is just, like, in the center of this lab. And that's kind of, like, that's really cool to see, too. Just, like, as someone who's played the original, it's like, there it is. Like, that's Jenova. And, like, again, knowing the context of that. I guess towards the end of 17 and leading into 18, when you finally see, like, Jenova's tank broken, and she's gone, and you see, like, the trail of just, like, goo, I guess, or slime. I don't really know what it was. So it leads into chapter 18 or 17. I lost track at this point.
So we're actually, I think, a little ahead of schedule.
Okay.
I think beginning of chapter 17 is when, right after you get Red 13, Cloud kind of walks slowly towards the elevator.
Yeah.
Microwave crawls, not so much, but towards the elevator, faints, and then wakes up.
Oh, you know what? Yeah.
Wakes up, and then we kind of get the lines about Aerith and the Cetra, as it were. Find out that they're one of the Aerith's one of the ancients. Shinra's trying to get to the Promised Land. They think that they can do that. She's talking about basically what the Whispers are. You find out who they finally are, and Red 13 kind of chimes in with that. Basically saying that they are arbiters of fate or destiny or whatever the word is they use. Saying that, this is what is going to happen. Like, they're essentially...
It's the point where the game, like, lays it all out for you, right?
Yeah,
where you're like,
essentially, yeah.
They're like, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, it's... I don't know, like, I definitely felt like, I'm like, okay, like... I was kind of all in on after that cutscene, like them walking through this, like, this idea of fate and fighting against fate, and like these things controlling it, like way into that, way into that, and it made me like really curious. I really like. I actually, again, it reminded me of Nier and like Automata in some ways. This idea of like trying to change something that you just can't.
Yeah. Because then it's right after that you do finally where everybody finally gets to see Sephiroth. Right in front of Jenova.
That's a cool scene. It's a cool.
Yeah.
It's
And even just where, like, you know, Cloud's like kind of walking towards Sephiroth. He's kind of having the headache thing again, and then eventually just kind of, you know, just like kind of just lets out this battle cry, grabs his sword, and tries running at Sephiroth. And then eventually Cloud falls down. Then that's what kind of starts the going back and forth between. And I thought that section was a little long to me.
Oh, it was super long.
And I was like, that was like, oh, we're all building up, and then it's like, we're getting through this last, you know, dungeon per se. Like, we got to get through this last moment.
It's definitely the moment like where you're at the end of the game. And they're like, there's 6 things you need to collect all around the world.
Yeah, exactly.
You're
Go
like,
find
oh,
the
right.
Triforce shards in Wind Waker. Yeah, that kind of thing.
In like Trials of Mana, I'm playing right now. It's like defeat the 8 Benevodons. Go do that. Done. Yeah. All right, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yes, I don't know why I totally blanked on the
that's okay.
info dump scene. So you go through that chapter. I've lost track of chapter numbers at this point. Take the elevator. You're at the top floor.
Mm-hmm.
So in the original game, when you reach that moment, the president of Shinra is dead.
Yep.
He is on the. There was blood trails all over. He's dead.
He still has the sword in him, doesn't he?
I think so.
I thought he still had the sword in him.
I think that might be the case. And it's in the original, it's a really impactful moment of oh. In this game, not the case. You hear someone screaming for help. You run outside. He is dangling on the edge, and I think it's unclear what brought him to that predicament.
Yeah,
I don't remember if he said. Barrett grabs him, pulls him up. He's interrogating him. There's a whole scene where he's kind of running in just a cowardice away from Barrett as Barrett's just laying into him, right? And the tables turn a little bit. President Shinra is just got a gun to Barrett. He's revealing his master plan, kind of talk, right? And and then it happens. And our boy Sephiroth shows up.
Yeah. Stabs the Shinra president, just as the prophecy foretold.
Mm-hmm.
And then...
as the Whispers would have it.
Yeah, and then the Whispers kind of get in the way, and then Sephiroth does the most, I know this isn't going to be real death, that happens.
I don't know,
so...
I was buying into it for a bit there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sephiroth stabs Barrett,
mm-hmm.
and sunglasses flying off forward direction.
Yeah.
Everybody's kind of losing their minds. So everybody at that time, everybody thinks he's dead. We have the boss fight.
I mean, it goes straight into a fight, which, again, I love this fight. I don't know what you think of it.
It was okay. I actually thought I was spoiled that I saw that fight beforehand. So I actually thought that was the final boss.
Same. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
How insane is it? One, that fight I feel had been shown multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
One in the launch trailer, which don't even get me started on that.
I didn't watch it. I guess I might have to go back and watch it.
So I went back and watched it after I finished the game, and it is mind blowing.
It's almost like the not gonna spoil anything, but it's like Death Stranding's launch trailer. Apparently, people are don't watch the Death Stranding launch trailer because
I think it's the case because I went back and if you remember, I even mentioned it to you after I beat Death Stranding, I watched the launch trailer.
A 7-minute trailer or something.
And
that.
At least half of it is just the ending cutscene
mm-hmm.
or something. This game does the launch trailer for Final Fantasy VII is very similar. You see this fight. It's a lot of stuff from the end of the game, and I'm just why? Why? For what purpose? So you have the fight with Genova, which is awesome, and towards the end of the fight when the Genova music kicks in, which is probably some of my favorite music from Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
It's chef's kiss good.
Yeah.
But no, I honestly because that fight is, I beat it my first try. It's not a long fight, but it's long enough that I had enough time to think. Mm-hmm. And I remember that fight being oh my god, they killed Barrett. Oh my god. Because that was one of my thoughts was well, what if it's not Aerith? What if it's someone else?
Mm-hmm.
What if that's the thing? And if and knowing that the end of this game was going to have weird stuff and controversial stuff, it helped. It's one of those weird things where but don't know what's happening, and it kind of distorts what you expect.
Yeah.
So I bought into it, at least for the length of the Genova fight.
Yeah, it was, to me, that was okay, no, the Whispers, they're making sure fate happens. Knowing the original game, I was he's not supposed to die here. So obviously, he's not going to die. which then the
and I think
whispers
there's
do
that
heal
line.
him.
I think there's the Red 13 has a line of something like, it looks like, I don't remember maybe you remember the phrasing better than I do, but it was something along the lines of like, yeah, like, looks like fate has something different in store for you, or you're not intended to die here, or something.
Yeah, or this is something that's like, this is not the death fate has intended, or something like that. Yeah.
Red 13's got some good lines towards the end of this game.
Even when the Genova fight starts, everybody's like freaking out, and Red 13 goes like, "This is just an illusion. Stay calm."
Yeah.
Like that's a really good line.
Yeah. So you have the fight. That leads into I have a stance in stories generally. I guess I break this rule sometimes. Where like, if you're gonna kill a character, you should kill them. Like, don't play funny games. I think with Barrett, I'm fine with it. And it's breaking that rule a little bit, because I do think if it's reinforcing this ideal of like, you don't change fate, and if you literally have like a set of characters built to make sure that is the case, then I'm like, okay, cool. I do have some grievances with other characters later, at the end of the game, but we'll get to that. So that leads into some fights. Another fight with Rufus, right?
Yeah. So you do end up seeing Sephiroth. Cloud tries to go after Sephiroth, but like jumps off the Midgard tower. Or the Shinra Tower. You do see that part where like Cloud sees Sephiroth as one of those black cloaked figures. I didn't know if that was supposed to be alluding to more things. But then that's when you get off that, and then Rufus shows up. You have the 1 versus 2 showdown with Rufus's dog, and I was getting my butt whooped by Rufus at the very beginning of this fight, and the dog. I actually thought, is this an auto fail fight? Like, you're gonna fail no matter what? Like, I was getting destroyed much on easy that I was like, we're gonna just absolutely lose here.
I don't think I lost in this fight, but it was definitely one of the only ones that I had to just kind of brute force my way through. It's one of the fights that I don't think I beat it the way you were supposed to. Because I know there's like, he like counters everything or something. He pretty much counters everything. You pretty much have to block some of his shots, but you really have to know what shots are coming. If you do the analyze thing, it will say like, if you use a certain attack, you can create an opening, but like, it doesn't specify what that attack is. So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So brute force my way through that. What else happens before the escape? You beat the fight.
You have that Cloud just about falls off the tower. Tifa comes back, saves him. Then eventually you kind of transition to Barrett and Aerith and Red 13 in the elevator, and then have a big old fight in like the kind of one of the floors, which I
feel like that fight was a bit long.
Yeah, I didn't love that fight. But then eventually you keep ascending downstairs. You get back to the lobby. With Barrett, Red 13, and Aerith, then Heidegger and all of his security people show up, and then and then Heidegger's like, "Identify yourselves," which is like one of the great lines. And then like Barrett's like, "I'm Avalanche," and then like Aerith's saying, "Local florist girl." Red 13 goes, "Lab rat dog." It's great.
Too good. That scene's incredible. The Cloud showing up in the motorcycle, and he's like channeling a Roche's spirit, basically. Love that stuff. And again, it's like, it's a little bit different from the original, but it's like thinking back on that, like the cutscene of them like in the truck and on the motorcycle, like escaping. Like it was definitely a lot of like heavy dose of nostalgia on that front. So we have the motorcycle escape sequence. We mentioned earlier in the episode, in the show, that like this is super long, lots of stuff going on. There's a point where I think I don't remember if it's like before the actual chase sequence happens. I think it might be where they like stop and they turn around and you look up and you see the Whispers just engulfed like engulfing the Shinra building.
Yeah.
That, and like it's a pretty wild just like image, right? There's like this incredible shot of like looking up at Shinra's tower, and like it's just engulfed in these whispers, and again just wondering like what is going to happen here, like what is coming next. So we do the long escape sequence. It leads into I always forget the name of this boss, but it's like the roller ball or roller something. It is the boss that you fight when you escape Midgar in the original game, and that is like that is the end of the escape Midgar sequence, and then you're left on like the edge of the highway looking out into the world. And you realize like, oh, it's not just Midgar, there's a whole overworld here. That's cool. Not so in this game. So you do fight that thing in the motorcycle like mini game, and then you get off and you're at the edge of the highway, and then we reach the super end game.
The other point of no return.
The other point of no return. So Sephiroth, he's here. He's hanging out.
So you walk forward, Sephiroth shows up. I'm trying to see if I can get like the exact point for point what happens here. So Sephiroth like descends at the edge of the highway. Kind of, you get ready to have the showdown. It seems like, but then Aerith kind of stops Cloud from like going and fighting. I was trying to remember some of this stuff. There's a lot of like
Aerith in the like, especially like as she starts to divulge like what the whispers are and what their purpose is. It feels like in the last couple hours there's a lot of Aerith just like channeling, like I don't even know the best comparison, like just Super Saiyan levels of like knowledge about the world and time. Like a lot of the things that she says, like it makes it seems apparent that this is almost like a different Aerith than what we've been interacting with in maybe the first half of the game. Where she's just like almost all-knowing in some ways, and like she doesn't like tell you like out and out what's happening, and sometimes she does, but sometimes she just has these like one or two lines where it's like it's just enough where you can tell like, okay, like I trust her, she knows what's up, like she knows what's going on. So she stops Cloud.
So and then so Sephiroth brings all the wisps, not whispers, I guess. Wisps. I'm getting my Sonic, lore, I guess. And
Sephiroth in the Blind Forest.
Exactly. And then it kind of transitions to daylight outside of Midgar, and you see Cloud, obviously, and then the camera raises, and that ain't Cloud. You see Zack. You see the end of what is, I guess, Crisis Core, whatever part in Final Fantasy VII where Zack is supposed to die. Then that's all that's all you get right there. So then you get more later. Then eventually that's when Sephiroth like walks into the portal. Aerith kind of changes the portal from light to darkness, and then eventually it's like, hey, we're trying to fight against fate here, fight against destiny at destiny's crossroads, as Aerith says.
There's so much to unpack there, but we'll go ahead and like go through the rest of the story, and then we can have the talk, right? So you go into what is like so the fight with the arbiter of fate, as it were, like the fight in and of itself, at least on my end, I did beat my first try, which I'm very happy I did, because apparently if you fail you have to do the whole thing over again, and that might have colored my perception of the fight had that happened,
right?
But you're fighting like, first you fight like 3 different types of wisps, and they have like different weapons, and then there's like also this like huge like arbiter of fate or whatever like in the background. This is like the most Kingdom Hearts 2 final boss fight like I've ever seen in any other game. I don't know if you've ever seen the end of Kingdom Hearts 2, like that final fight, but it's basically this. in a lot of ways. It is like, think about like the way that a lot of this fight is Cloud jumping from building to like jumping from like crazy set piece building top to building top, like slashing through things, going down slides. That's basically Kingdom Hearts 2's final boss. It's like Sora is just like leaping and flying from building, chopping buildings in half. Like, it's crazy. And this fight is basically that. So I love it from that perspective.
Yeah, I didn't have much trouble with it. I mean, basically using Overcharge, Maximum Fury with Barret, and then when they're staggered, just walking in and using the whatever Tifa's like unflinching power, whatever it is, and then uppercutting them, getting the stagger, just absolutely wrecking them. So it wasn't that hard of a fight for me. But yeah, you beat those three, and then eventually
we defeat Fate.
Yeah, we defeated Fate. We've defeated the Destiny. Then some feathers fall, maybe, let's say, which then leads into the final boss fight, which is Sephiroth.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever, in the 5 years since, or the 4.5 since we knew this would be in parts, I guess, did you ever think that it wouldn't be Sephiroth? Or like, I guess like that was the question, right? Like we knew, like eventually we found out last year that it would end at Midgar, right? And like from that point on, like, you know, there's lots of discussion on how it would end, what the final boss would be like. Do you think there was ever a world that it wouldn't have been Sephiroth?
I think Sephiroth is too much in the culture zeitgeist, I guess, now, that like he had to be. Like, if this even was a 1-for-1 remake with like a little bit of deviation, I think you had to include Sephiroth in this to kind of appease some fans, I guess.
I wonder, it was something I would think to myself a lot for whatever reason. I'm obsessed about this game so much over the past few years, like, because I wondered, I was like, I do, like, do they do it? Like, if Sephiroth is the final fight here, like, what do they have to change to make that happen, to make sense? And I kind of like something you just said of like, you know, it has to be him, because of the zeitgeist, because of, it's like the same way I feel about Aerith and her death in this story, in the original story, and like what that means for the future of this remake project is like, because it's so ingrained in just video game culture, like, I wonder if that impacted the way, you know, Nomura and Katase, like, I wonder if that changed the way they viewed this project. Like, I wonder if they, like, thought about that and said, like, was there conversations of, like, no, dude, like, you're an idiot. Like, we can't just not have Sephiroth in this game. Like, he has to be. And I wonder, again, also, like, you know, not to go too much on a tangent, like, what does that mean for the, like, the theme of this game being fighting Destiny, if the way you approach the story is saying, we're going to change Destiny by also saying this character has to be in this. Yeah. Or is destined to be, like, the culmination. I don't know, lots of thoughts, but you have a final fight with Sephiroth in the Singularity.
So this is kind of even before that, just kind of a little side tangent. This is where the game started to get a little jarring for me. Okay. Because I know it's just it's the cinematic cutscenes of it all, and like I don't know if they could do that much just cinematic stuff in game, but you start getting pre-rendered footage, and I don't know if that was kind of a turnoff to you, but it certainly was to me.
I think I only noticed it like after the game was over, and it was like the final scene.
Okay, so yeah, that one, and then even when right before the final fight with Sephiroth, because it was jarring to me just because, you know, all of the cutscenes like have whatever weapons you have equipped on, but then when it goes to the pre-rendered, you can just kind of tell visually that it's pre-rendered, and you can see that Cloud automatically has the Buster Sword.
I think I do remember noticing it before the Sephiroth fight, because after like when that scene rolled, I remember thinking like, oh, did I beat it? Am I done?
Oh, right,
like,
right.
No. Yeah. So one thing that does happen in the Whisper fight and also the Sephiroth fight is the characters that are in the fight with you are determined by choices you've made.
Yeah, I didn't know that either until
last
night.
For me it was Tifa and Barrett.
Okay.
I don't know, did you have Aerith in your fight?
I had Tifa and Aerith, yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I don't know where or what things I did altered that at all. But again, another thing that I like that it just happened and they didn't bring attention to it.
Yeah.
What did you think of the fight itself?
I thought it was fairly straightforward. There's a couple cinematic gameplay moments where Sephiroth's just kind of whooping you a little bit, like kind of moving you from locale to locale, I guess.
Yeah.
And they're pretty much, hey, you do this much damage, Sephiroth's gonna come and hit you and move you to the next area to whoop him some more, basically. I thought the fight was pretty straightforward. I didn't have any trouble with it. I think maybe I had to use... It really helped having prayer or pray, I guess, with Aerith really helped in the fight, so I didn't
definitely
really
a moment where I was like, I might have to come back. Like, it was like 2 a.m, right? I was like, I might have to come back to this. I think I beat him on my 3rd try, and it was the like, all right, this is my last try. And I ended up beating him. But it was cool to like learn the fight and figure out like how to do it, because like the first try whooped, just totally like he trashed me. Second fight did a little bit better. 3rd fight I like just had total control, and that felt really good.
Yeah, for sure.
To like be able to totally understand like what I needed to do, how to do it, and execute on it. That's always a good feeling. Love the fight, obviously. Like, great fight, and it like has me excited too, because it's like, all right, like this is the end of this game, and it's pretty like standard fare JRPG, crazy over the top, but it's like, well, they gotta keep building on this, right? Like the next Sephiroth fight has to be even crazier. So like that's kind of exciting to like know, like to see how that will end up transpiring over the years.
You do end up defeating Sephiroth, but then you basically have the climax moment of, this is where we are going to defy fate. Being where each of the characters are trying to take out the Wisp, where then the Whispers are trying to stop Cloud and the others, but then Cloud is able to get up there and kind of deliver the final blow to Sephiroth. Which, when I watched that in the moment, which maybe makes more sense later, but I was like, Sephiroth just let him do that? Like, meaning like he just stood there, like, he didn't block it or move out of the way, he just like was accepting this. Then eventually you go to the World's Edge or whatever.
And so one thing I will say, and like I think the World's Edge, like what happens here, like this is total like just, I mean, a lot of it's like just huge fan service, but it's awesome and I love it. I don't know if I would have been able to, like, I've been thinking about this a lot, is like, again, I really thought we were heading for an MGS4 style moment where like gloves are off, like it's the two of them, and similar to the end of the original game where it's just one-on-one and you like, it's kind of an auto win, right? I might have died if that happened. I don't know. But I was ready for it.
Life bars show up.
And especially like, and like so it's at the World's Edge or whatever, and so the two of them like squaring off. Cloud does like the stance with the Buster Sword in hand. Music kicks in. There's like a like some whispers are flying around. There's kind of like some staticky stuff. It kind of like flashes, and for a moment, just a brief moment, Sephiroth and Cloud take on the PS1 models, and then it flashes back to the PS4 updated models as well. And it's just like that moment, Cloud's like, "Oh, I was dreaming."
It made me think that we completely forgot to talk about the Arbiter of Fate or Harbinger of Fate fight with the flashbacks that happened. I don't know if you want to touch on that real quick.
There's a few.
There's 4, I think, in total.
There's one specifically that is like I think just a scene from the end of the game, of the original game.
I want to say that's when I took that scene of I think you're talking about of Cloud and Sephiroth kind of leaping at each other.
No, there's a scene where it shows like, I don't remember if it's Red 13, but it's like his like tribe or like the
that one, the
Nanaki or whatever, like and like it flashes back and someone's like, what was that? And Red 13 says something to the effect of like this is our world if we fail here today.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Which I thought was like a really interesting line, and that like you can dissect that 5 different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of, or go ahead.
I was gonna say the other one. So there's the one where one of the flashbacks, it has like Cloud and Sephiroth leaping at each other, and I don't know if somebody talked about it being like an Advent Children. I mean, we'll get to that, but there was something with that. Then, of course, the other two is the flashback of the materia dropping, Aerith's death, and then there's the other one of Cloud laying somebody's body in water, which you can obviously equate to that being Aerith. But I completely those were just some of those moments that I'm like, that is like what really hammered home the like we're changing things here. Like, we're going to defeat this thing. These things that are supposed to happen are not going to happen.
So back to the edge of the world.
Mm-hmm. The edge of creation, I think.
The edge
is
of creation.
Technical
You're right.
term, I think.
Yeah, that's totally it. Which is so much cooler. There's a cutscene plays like Sephiroth and Cloud are fighting, duking it out the way it's intended, right? Like that's and Sephiroth, they like clash and they're like really close in together, and Sephiroth goes it says something, and I don't remember word for word what it is, but it's something to the effect of like, when this moment happens, you have 7 seconds, like what will you do? And of course, like, who knows what could that be referencing to? I don't know. Like, it could be 5 different things.
So the word is so Sephiroth swords Cloud. And Sephiroth says 7 seconds till the end, and he says time enough for you, perhaps. Then also, and then he says, but what will you do with it? Let's see.
Right, and so a lot of people have speculated, like, oh, is it about saving Aerith? Is it about something else? Like, the more I think about it and talking about it now, I kind of think this is referencing something that we just don't know. Something that'll be totally new. I've thought a lot, like, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but like, I made it pretty clear that I think Aerith will die no matter how the rest of the story shakes out. But I kind of buy into the theory I've heard some other people share that like Cloud will be the one to do it. I think like there's still like a little bit more story to go in the game, but like let's finish this out first. So that happens, kind of flashes back. It's over. The fight's been won for now. I think they talk about continuing. Like Cloud's like, as long as Sephiroth is out there, I will still go. And there's some different scenes. We see more of Zack, and there's that like sequence where we see Zack and Aerith like walk past each other without seeing each other. Kind of like different timelines, different like multiverse stuff going on. But like you can see it in their eyes that both of them know. And what else? Am I missing something else here?
So you do kind of get a little flashback. So Rufus is now the president of Shinra.
Yes.
I think that was like a really cool moment where like Heidegger says Mr. Vice President, and Rufus doesn't answer, and then Seng comes in and goes, Mr. President. He goes, that's right. I like that line.
So there's a lot of allusions to Zack possibly being alive in another timeline or something.
Yeah, so you get the rapper of not his name, Spot, or what's his name?
I think it's Spot. I think Spot's right.
And you see it's like a different version of him.
I didn't
basically
like
saying
totally
like a
did
different
not
timeline.
even catch that.
I didn't either. I noticed that the dog looked different, but I didn't
it was 2
immediately
a.m,
be like,
so maybe I just
yeah,
didn't like. But
yeah,
it had been so long since I'd seen the dog, anyways, that I was like, all right, weird.
yeah.
There is, and I don't remember if this is during the credits or not. I think it might be, but like, you do see a shot of Biggs.
Yeah, that's
alive.
right before the final shots.
Yeah. I will say, I will just like get this out of the way. That's the one that I'm a little unsure how I feel about. Because I think you don't see Jesse at all, but I've heard some theories that Jesse like will pop up at Golden Saucer.
Yeah,
in future parts, and like I actually kind of believe that. Even though we don't see her, like if Biggs is alive, I wouldn't be shocked if Jesse's alive. And I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, some people say that the gloves that are on the table next to Biggs sleeping are Jesse's, but like you don't really know if that's the case.
Okay.
Of course, one thing we didn't touch on was Wedge. If we think he's dead, he was back at the tower, tries to defy the Whispers, and I don't know if it's alluded that he gets thrown out the window and dies.
It seems to be the case, but
fades to black.
It's definitely off screen. And if it's the thing of like, if Biggs is alive, I would believe that all 3 of them are alive.
And I don't want to be like I called it, but even when they were like quote unquote dead, I was like, they're not dead. Like I don't think they killed him.
And I don't know. Like I think part of it is like, yeah, well they've conquered fate, and by doing that, there's like a butterfly effect. And that's causing there's going to be some weird stuff going on in the next part. And so like I can see that, and I can see myself becoming okay with it over time. Just like in the moment watching that and seeing him there, I was a little like, oh, okay. Not that like I'm not happy if people are alive, right? But it's like, well, it takes some of the weight out of it, I think.
Yeah.
So Collin, the end of this game, at first glance, seems to be implying like some massive shifts for the future.
Yeah. The unknown story will continue, or something like that.
I don't know.
So
Kingdom Hearts has been doing this for a while, and I guess Final Fantasy 15 kind of did something similar at the beginning. Square Enix loves this like black background, white text, weird phrase. The unknown journey will continue. Love that.
I don't know if you might get a kick out of this, but I was like watching some other spoiler stuff on YouTube where like somebody posts in the comments of like Final Fantasy VII fans, wow, this is incredible. Kingdom Hearts fans, wow, first time, huh?
Yeah.
It's like, oh man.
I don't think it's as crazy Kingdom Hearts as some people were making it out to be. Like it's definitely over the top, but like story wise, like I don't think it touches Kingdom Hearts just yet, which is fine.
So, I was gonna say, let's ask the question.
Yeah.
Did you like it?
Oh, I love it.
I love it too.
Great. I'm happy to hear this.
I think it's. I didn't learn until probably like 3 a.m. that there is a group of people that really hate this.
Yeah.
I did not know that. I did not
surprised.
realize that. But like, there's like a really like vocal community, but of course, it could be a small community. But
I jumped into like the spoiler thread on Resetera. It was nasty. It was rough.
Really?
I jumped out of there. I mean, it wasn't like there was, both sides. People saying good and bad things, but I jumped out of there pretty quick because I was like, hey, I want to talk about this with people that I can have a conversation with and have it not be like a rant.
Yeah.
So when I finished it, it was definitely like I had a lot of thoughts and I wasn't sure about a lot of things, right? The more I think about it and the more time has passed, the more I like it.
Okay.
At first I was really unsure because like part of me, I definitely like got that vibe of like, wow, like I was trying to like get into the head of someone who didn't like it, right? And I was like, I can kind of see how like if the end of this game is saying like, hey, things are gonna be different, and if it starts going into crazy like pathways, like in crazy different directions, I can see the disappointment of like wanting this one game to be remade for like 15 years, and it finally happens, and you get like a tenth of it, and then suddenly it's gonna be totally different. And so I was like, yeah, I could see how that's kind of a bummer. But then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, you know what? Like, one, I actually think the remaining parts of this are going to stick pretty close to the original. My mindset right now is like, I think a lot of the major story beats will be the same, but they might happen a little differently.
Yeah.
I think like I totally buy into, I don't know if I believe it or think it will happen, but like I mentioned, like would not be shocked at all if the twist is that like Cloud is the one that kills Aerith in the next part.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's pretty fair, because he almost does it in Final Fantasy VII. Wasn't it with the Black Materia or something like that? He almost kills Aerith himself. So yeah, I was
and, like,
first.
That's the way that I think they're going about this, is that like things like that was like almost happened, like I think those will be the little changes that make it a larger like divergent, I guess.
So my thought process through all this was, okay, they're not going to kill Aerith, they're going to kill somebody else.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, and then I start listening to stuff that's like, okay, well, Aerith actually has to die for the integrity of the story.
Right.
Of like the importance of it. And then it's like, okay, yeah, I think she probably will still die. I don't think there was even parts in this game I thought she was going to die. When she's standing there on the edge of the highway, I thought something was going to happen there. There's a part where like I have the subtitles on, and there's a part where like she starts talking, but then the end of the subtitles is like a word, then ... And I was like, oh no, she's gonna die right there. She's not gonna get her words out. But like, no, it doesn't happen. But yeah, I still think she will probably die.
Yeah. I do think that like the situation surrounding that, like her death, like when that happens, like I think there will be changes, and it might be minor, it might be the way it happens or where it happens, or it could be major. It could be like, oh, Cloud's the one that did it, oh my god, and like that that like, you know, like in the original game he already spirals after that. Like you can only imagine what would happen if it was actually him that did it, whether through mind control or whatever, like but I think there will be other things. I'm not sure what to think about the Zack stuff just yet. That's like the one thing that I'm like, because part of me like very much like I don't think that he's alive in like I guess this timeline. But I'm unsure, but like I don't know, like part of me like once a year or two ago theorized that we would get pieces of Crisis Core like gameplay, like where we would play as Zack in part of the remake. So I'm
thinking going forward we're gonna be playing as Zack. I think there's got to be some parts where Zack is playable.
So there's an interview this past week, or maybe like I think this past week, where Nomura said something along the lines of like, you know, it was talking about like how big each part would be, and he was like, yeah, if we make them like super huge, it'll take forever, but if we make them in chunks like this one, like we'll release them at a better frequency. Which like, you know, I was thinking like, oh yeah, maybe if it's like every 2 years or something, like maybe the next one's 2022. Like maybe like, but like, could you imagine like the game opens, it's hard for me to like I think the opening of the game, right, like if you're leaving Midgar, there's kind of some downtime, and I'm thinking like you want your game to be like, you know, pretty like hectic or whatever, like you want it to be like a pretty like hype moment, right? Like, can you imagine if the opening of the game is like the final standoff in Crisis Core?
So even when that happened in this game, I thought the camera was gonna zoom around to Zack's back, and then it was gonna play.
I don't know. Like like I just wonder if like the next part, like you open with that, you're playing as Zack, and you live. I guess like some of the impact might be a little bit taken away because like the end of this game is showing him surviving it. But yeah, this idea like maybe that's the opening. He lives, and you're just like, oh, what does that mean? Yeah. And then like it flashes back, and you're Cloud and company, and you're like in the open world driving or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Go ahead.
I'm just spitballing here. Does Zack in his timeline have to kill Aerith, which then retroactively kills Aerith in Cloud's timeline?
I think it's just
is Sephiroth. Is Sephiroth able to go in between both timelines? Right. And yeah.
It's the only thing I'm a little just like uncertain about. It's like that specific story thread of like how is he handled in this?
Yeah.
Because like at first I thought like for a while I was like the remake project, if they're doing parts they can sprinkle in some story from Crisis Core, can like flesh out some things, that'd be cool. And then you get like HD Zack, and that'd be fun to play as him for a little bit. But now if we're dealing with like, hey, he's like alive in this timeline, what does that mean? A little unsure about that.
Yeah.
We'll see. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know how to begin to speculate about Zack and what his role could be in all of this.
Yeah.
Going forward.
So Sephiroth.
Yeah.
Is he Advent Children Sephiroth?
So I didn't believe it for a while. Until I watched like the Easy Ally Spoilercast and saw.
Oh, Max went crazy. I love Max.
Like listening to Maximilian dude walk through like the stages as he referred to them.
The levels. You're on level 4, man.
Yeah, like it was maybe one of the most. I just want to say like, shout out to that video. It's like probably one of the most entertaining videos I've seen all year, or just in a long time. I usually listen to podcasts, like I have them on in the background and just like do something else, like play a game or something. I could not take my eyes off the screen. And like I know a lot of this, like the different levels and stuff like that he went through of speculation and what the story could mean. Like I don't want to go through it here because I wouldn't do it justice. He does a better job of explaining it.
Absolutely.
I know that a lot of it is speculation for sure, like almost all of it, but I believe it. Like all of it, it just makes so much sense. I didn't believe that Sephiroth was from the future. When I first beat it, I was like, no, that's reaching a bit. Like, I didn't know if I believed that, that Aerith in this game was also from the future. Like, I didn't know if I believed that, like, this meant that or that meant this. But, like, now I do. I totally do. Like, I totally buy into this idea that, like, the 3 whispers you fought right before the Sephiroth fight were actually, like, referencing Advent Children characters. And that, like, the fact that Sephiroth has, like, the one wing, like, that means something, like, and again, it goes back to, like, me gushing about the intro cutscene of this game and the music, like, that has some kind of, like, role in understanding, like, what is actually happening here. I buy all of it. I buy into every last bit of it.
So, I guess if I could try and summarize this, like, really quickly, the basis, I guess, of a lot of this is Sephiroth tries to go to the Promised Land by entering the life stream, correct?
Yes.
That's like part of it. Sephiroth knows that he loses and that he's not able to do that, so he essentially needs Cloud and the gang to defy fate, because then that kind of resets the stage a little bit for Sephiroth to kind of live forever, get the life stream, be eternal. And so that's why I thought, thinking back to, okay, why did Sephiroth just let Cloud smack him in the face with a Buster Sword at the end of that boss fight? And okay, well, that's because Sephiroth wanted this to happen.
Yeah. And I know
that's kind of like the essential.
I know it gets tricky with like time travel and stuff like that. I know like a lot of people, their first gut reaction is like, "Oh God." But one thing I appreciate, like, going with this kind of like this speculation of this is true, this is what is happening, which it really feels like it is. Like listening to Maximilian dude like lay it out, it really feels like that is the case. And we could be wrong. We could all be wrong.
Yeah.
One thing I appreciate about this game, and to an extent Avengers, like Endgame, is I like that their approach is a little bit different. You know, I like that, like, in Endgame, they're just like, all right, like, it's, sometimes I like that when they just lay it all out. When they're like, this is what it is, it's this, this, and this. It has to be this, because if we do it this way, it's not going to work. And, like, they explain it, right? And one thing I like about this game is, if it is, like, Sephiroth has, like, gone back in time to kind of put the wheels in motion, to set the stage, to put them on even ground, and to, like, guide them into a different direction eventually. Like, if that's the case, for me, it becomes a little less about time travel and more about, like, altering fate and playing with destiny. And I wonder, you know, at first I was like, wow, they're going to go in a really different direction. But then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, well, actually, maybe not. If the theme of this remake is not just about the fans, but about the creators, like, if it's about creators trying to retain ownership of their creations, and the creator says, if I'm going to remake this, I want to be able to change it. I want to be able to have control over this, despite what the fans think, because it's my creation. You know, it's like when creators retcon stuff, it's like, well, I want to have control over it, then the fans get mad because it's like, well, you ruined the story. And, like, you have, like, you know, George Lucas or, like, J.K. Rowling to an extent, right? Like, where they do these things after the story's over, and then people are like, well, that's stupid. Like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And so if the theme is about, it's not like, you know, what people will say, like, oh, it's the whispers, it's the fans holding the creators back. What if the theme is it's the creators wanting control over their story, over their creation? And, like, is that avenue then through Sephiroth saying, like, for me to achieve what I want, I need to change things, and so then is like the resolution of that, like, that you can't. That, like, even if this game, like, even though in this game, like, the takeaway could be, oh, they defied fate, they beat destiny, therefore their paths can change. Like, I wonder if the future might actually come back around full circle and say, well, no. Because no matter how much you do it, how much you fight back, you will always arrive at the destination one way or the other. Like,
to steal a quote from BioShock Infinite, we swim in different oceans but land at the same shore.
There's always a lighthouse.
Always a lighthouse.
There's always a golden saucer. There's always a Sephiroth.
Yeah.
And there is always a live stream. Like, I wonder if that will be, like, the thing, like, the rug pulled out from under us is, like, no, this isn't about fans and the whispers and, like, the relation between whispers and fans and fate and destiny. This is about creators, you know, coming to terms with their age and understanding how long this will take. And this, like, being maybe the, like, their this is, like, their thing, like, this is the thing that they will be known for forever. And so it's like their one last chance to say, even if we wanted to change it, we can't, because it is Final Fantasy VII and you can't, like, touch it. I don't know, I wonder, like, you know, this ending, and I think that gets dangerous, right? Like, you could have a Star Wars situation where they do that, and then the reaction is, oh, they tried to do something and fans got angry and they just scurried back to the safety of things, right? Like, that could be the reaction if they don't, depending on how it goes. I don't know. I wonder if, like, this is as much a retelling of Final Fantasy VII as much as it is, like, the creators of this game working through their feelings on one of their most well-known creations.
Yeah. And,
like, how do you cope with that? Like, how does, like, I mean, if you think about, like, Sephiroth, right? Like, you know, he loses, and so, like, how does he cope with that? Well, he's like, well, I get desperate. Like, I go back. I can change things. I'm all powerful. I am the life stream. Like, I'm Genova. I am this. Like, I will do everything I can. And if that doesn't succeed, then what do you do?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah.
Do you think that there are two Sephiroths, like the original game Sephiroth and then Advent Children Sephiroth?
So there's like clone stuff going on. I think in the first game, in the original game, even, and I don't. It's real foggy for me, so I don't remember. I know there's like some weird clone stuff going on, so I don't know. I don't think we'll ever see like a second Sephiroth like in the flesh, like other like unless it's like weird, like you see at the top of the tower. There's like the Sephiroth in the hood. It's like maybe to that extent, but I don't know. I wonder if yeah, I don't know. I wonder if like the reunion stuff like will change. Like will the second part just be called Reunion? Like will it be called something else?
Some people said Remind. I heard that online. I thought you'd enjoy that.
Yeah. Final Fantasy VII Seconds. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be called Remake. I don't think Remake will be in the title.
I don't think so either. Yep. I think you're right on it.
Yeah.
What else?
What else? What
There's so much Advent Children stuff that gets alluded to that, I haven't seen it. I feel like I just need to. I have it on,
I guess you probably
on Blu-ray.
Should.
Yeah. I'm just gonna go. It was kind of weird, like hearing all this Advent Children stuff and that Easy Allies Spoilercast, and then Max being like, "It's not a very good movie" after the fact.
I've watched it once, and it's been probably over a decade since I've seen it.
And then there's also some stuff from, I guess, before Crisis. I don't really know what that is, is that?
So before Crisis, I believe was a mobile game. I don't even know if it came out over here.
Okay.
There's Before Crisis, Crisis Core. There's Dirge of Cerberus, which is a PS2 game.
Right.
Crisis Core, obviously the PSP game. I never played that one actually.
I bet that's going crazy on eBay right now. If you're trying to find a boxed copy of Crisis Core,
I don't know how much work it would be. Like even just like up-resing it, like not really doing, not like remaking or anything, just like pretty like like putting it on digitally on PS4 or something would be
Square
cool.
Enix can port a Game Boy Advance game to or updated game or something like that, whatever that was of Kingdom Hearts.
I mean,
put that on PS4.
Zero into PS4. Did you ever play Type 0?
I did not. No.
The end of that game, they tease like Type 1.
Oh, okay.
Never happened. Never happened. I like that game a lot, actually. I really like Type 0 a lot. Anyways.
Yeah, that was a PS4 game, I think. That was kind of early PS4.
There was a lot of people angry because it was like... No, it was on Vita in Japan.
Okay.
And when it was localized, it only came to PS4 and PC.
Okay. Yeah. There's rumors to like people that Cloud knew, like what is like, oh, I gotta go tell so and so about this. Do you remember that part at all? I think Maximilian Dude maybe mentioned something about it. It's when you guys are or everybody's in the Shinra Tower and he's like, you're Cloud, right? Mm-hmm. Like I gotta go tell so and so.
Yeah.
Apparently that's like a Before Crisis thing, or maybe.
I think it was a Crisis Core character or something.
Okay.
But I don't know. I would not know that.
Yeah. I just we're talking about. So well, I guess I'll say this. When I first heard about like people not liking this, I was like, "How in the world can you not like this?" Like that was my initial reaction. I was like, "How in the world can you just not like this?"
Right.
And then eventually, I'm just like, "Okay, I guess I can see it a little bit." And I'm not generalizing how people's thoughts are this, but like as someone who didn't enjoy my subverted expectations with, well, I guess everybody's bringing up Star Wars with The Last Jedi, right. Personally, I was really loving how they subverted expectations with the remake.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like the big, like, I don't know, everybody's like, oh, this is how you subvert expectations, or no, right. This is not how you do it. I think, So I think they're totally different. I trust Nomura in all this, I think.
Sure. Like, I do think they're totally different. I definitely, when I finished this, I did think about Star Wars, right? Because I think part of that is just because it was like one of the more recent examples of this kind of thing happening. And so there was a little fear. Like, so for me, right, you and I differ I think quite a bit on the recent trilogy, where I liked the first movie. I liked 7. I loved 8, and I despised 9. And that's that. Like, I don't know. I enjoyed watching 9. I just time was not kind to it for me. But with this, like, it is different. Like, it's not the same thing. It just it reminded me of it because it's a similar time span. That's one of the more recent examples of it.
Yeah.
I do worry, right? Like, so part of it, I think, ultimately, due to the nature of what this project is and what the sequels will be, like, if they don't stick the landing, that will likely alter the way I feel about certain things. But if they do, then I might come away loving it even more. Yeah. Right? And so it's a little hard to judge certain things. So like I said, I don't know how I feel about Biggs being alive. But my mind could easily be changed, depending on which way that goes. I could hate it, I could end up loving it 3 years from now. Yeah. And so it's tough in that respect. I have seen people say that, like, I don't like it. It's not that I don't like change, it's the execution of it. And I guess I get that. I can kind of understand that. But also, like, at the same time, I'm totally fine with how it was executed. I've seen people say they hate the Wisps, or the Whispers, and I'm like, actually, I like them. I mean, maybe you could argue that, like, they could have a different design that's not as, like, basically the same. There's a lot of, like, those kinds of designs. So, like, I guess you could argue that, right? It'd almost be cool if, like, instead of an actual creature, it was, like, every so often you would see, like, I'm thinking, I want to say puppet strings, but I'm specifically thinking of Disney's Hercules with the Fates. And they have, like, the gold. Have you seen the movie, by the way?
Maybe when I was, like, 10.
So, I'll describe it. Maybe it'll, like, maybe it'll jog your memory. So in Hercules, obviously based on Greek mythology, there are the Fates, the sisters, and it's, like, the 3 of them. And there are sequences where they're controlling fate through the use of these, like, gold strands. And so, like, maybe, I don't know, like, if you don't like the design of the Whispers, like, maybe it would have been cool if there was a cutscene where something was happening and they needed, I don't know, like, for example, they needed Cloud to be moved away or something like that. And, like, during the cutscene, you would see, like, a gold strand, like, connecting to his body, like, moving him. Like, that that would have been maybe interesting. Although maybe a little, that maybe would have been a little bit more, like, on the nose than it already is. But yeah.
So, like, even, like, I see stuff, people were like, lazy writing. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. I think sometimes the performances can be a little flat. But, like, I when people say it's like, well, they just threw this together with lazy writing, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I think generally, like, writing performances and all, like, soundtrack, like, I think all of that stuff is just excellent. Like, just in it. So it was about the fight where you're fighting the 3 harbingers or whatnot, that it really did kind of hit me. And I know a lot of people also have been saying this online, but, like, this game is a sequel. And some people have debated that.
And I mean, it's why
to hear what you say.
It's why I said, like, it's exactly what I said earlier, that, like, this is one of the few remakes that I genuinely believe you need to play the original game before you play this.
I am so glad I did.
Yeah. That's good.
And maybe, and honestly, I might have a completely different outlook. I might be one of those people saying, like, I thought it was stupid, convoluted, or whatever. I don't know who the black-haired guy is. Why are these whispers about the original game? Or getting these flashbacks. I don't really understand what the flashbacks are. Why is Red 13 just running outside like crazy? Like, after this flashback, I was like, I don't understand what's going on. But, like, knowing those scenes, it was so much more impactful. And I feel like you have to. And I don't know. I know a lot of people have talked about that. This is not the game Square Enix was selling to people.
See, I don't.
People were. I don't really agree with that.
Any of that stuff, I feel like I would just in one ear out the other. Like anyone who's like, oh, you don't call it a remake because it's like, listen, like, and I think in some ways they've kind of done a little damage control where like there's been interviews where they're like, no, like it's gonna continue following the story, like we're gonna continue doing like, I think they've made it pretty clear, and I think it reinforces like some of my beliefs of like, yeah, things will be different, but it's still gonna hit like the major plot points. Like I think we can get into speculation a little bit before wrapping up, but like I kind of mentioned it earlier, like the Wutai stuff will probably be most likely be mandatory and it'll probably be expanded. And there's probably gonna be a lot more to it.
Yeah.
Which is exciting. Like that stuff is cool. As long as it's done well, obviously. But like I do the major story beats, like that stuff will still come, I think. And I think it'll still come and still work within the way that they're trying to retell the story. Like if we follow this theme of fate and trying to fight against fate and changing your fate, like that stuff can still happen. Yeah. And that with this story being told, and I don't doubt that it will, like, or it won't, or whatever.
Yeah. And I think about going forward, and maybe we can go off into another conversation about music.
Yeah.
But I almost want to say, I don't know, I would say a lot of the music, even maybe going forward with the sequels, are already written. Like, I guess we have the Golden Saucer theme.
Yeah, there was a lot of like...
She's theme is in there. The On Our Way theme is like literally like the music of Calm in there.
And I know, like, one thing that I do worry about, and I don't know if this is just them being cagey, if maybe this is just them following the marketing plan of like, we can't let them know that it's 3 parts. Not yet.
Yeah.
But like as part of some of these recent interviews, like in Ultimania magazines or whatever, I think there has been a pretty recent quote. Like they said it last year, and I was like, didn't know if I believed them, but they said it recently of like, yeah, we don't know how many parts it'll be, and I do worry about that. I worry that they actually mean it. Because part of me wants to believe that they're just like joshing around and just being like, oh no, it's 3, but we're not going to tell you yet.
Yeah.
But I'm worried that they mean it.
Well, specifically when you look at how far ahead Square Enix usually announces games, like, even, was Versus 13 really even all that crazy into development before? How long they announced Final Fantasy just 13 itself?
Yeah.
Before, and that finally got anything. And
I mean, you wonder, like, Square Enix usually announces Final Fantasy. Like, so if you, like, okay, so if we go back, I don't remember far back enough on PS2 to know this, but, like, before the PS3 launched, they announced the Final Fantasy, like, 13 Fabula Nova Chrysalis project, right? So it was 13, Agito 13, Versus 13. Agito 13 ended up becoming Type 0.
Okay.
Before the PS4 came out. Final Fantasy 15. So, Colin, there's a PlayStation 5 supposedly coming out this year.
Something like that.
Do we think that either one of these 2 games will be announced in 2020? The next part of Final Fantasy VII, whatever they call it, or do you think Final Fantasy 16 will be announced like this year?
I would think they have to finish 7's thing before they jump to 16.
So with that though, do you think, like, if that's the case, do you think we won't, like, is it just a reality that we're never going to see 16 for like a decade?
Well, I'm gonna say something that's probably controversial, maybe right now. I would say
maybe 16 doesn't need to happen.
Well, I was gonna say 2022 is Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. Whatever.
I think I
don't think it's gonna be this 4 or 5 years like some people.
I don't either, and especially if you consider like the development on this game was restarted like 3 years ago.
Yeah, they pretty much restarted with CyberConnect and all that.
So I will say, and no, I guess this is some speculation or rumor, but like, it's my understanding, at least through some bit of like interviews with like Yoshi P, who's the director of Final Fantasy XIV, like, and also like speculation, like it seems implied that him and his team are working on 16 right now, or have been. And I was thinking about this. I did think for a while like that it would just be this before 16, but the more I think about it, the more I actually think that like we could see them interspersed. Like we could see like I guess it depends, right? Because like, you know, for a long time we've been in this field that like Final Fantasy games do not release near each other. Like, you know, 13 was 2009. I don't remember. I guess 14 wasn't. I guess 14 was technically a year after 13. And it was a little different because it was an MMO, but maybe this is a little different because it's a remake.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not too crazy to see like 2022 be Final Fantasy VII Part 2, and then 2023 be Final Fantasy 16.
I just still feel like it's too soon for 16, I guess.
I don't know.
Especially, I mean, I guess maybe not once, you know, they were I don't know his name, but the director of 15 left and was like, okay, well, I guess we're just canceling all the other episodes for 15.
Right.
Or other plans for 15, which is then like, okay, I might as well just get started on something new.
Yeah.
But then where does that leave Kingdom Hearts in all of this? Is there another mainline Kingdom Hearts that Nomura is going to do, or?
I mean, so like Kingdom Hearts 3 was developed by, I think, the Osaka team, which from what I understand, like, I'm not going to pretend like I fully understand everything about this, or like their team dynamic and setup and who does what. I'm pretty sure that's the team that did Birth by Sleep. And they're like, from my understanding, they're like the main Kingdom Hearts team now. Like after Birth by Sleep, I think they did a lot of work on like the HD reports and stuff like that. They did the 2.8 prologue thing as well.
Final chapter prologue.
Yes, that one.
Don't ask me why I know that.
So I think they're the main team, and so I wouldn't be shocked if like Nomura just does what he's been doing for like a decade and a half now of like just hopping back and forth. I think Kingdom Hearts, like that team is kind of in a place where they have like probably like multiple people in a director kind of role aside from Nomura. And Nomura's even said, they're like, yeah, we've got like a couple Kingdom Hearts games coming. One's closer than you think. And we still haven't heard about that, and that was in January, which is like 7 years ago. So, I don't know.
Introducing Jeff Keighley's Summer of Games.
Yeah.
I don't know.
See, I don't know. Like, yeah, I don't. I'm so curious because like if you have this project that will like even if it's 3 parts, right? And let's say they're 2 years apart, like that still takes us to 2024, and in that time, I would certainly hope that at least another Kingdom Hearts game is released in that time. So I don't like.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know like what their schedule looks like over the next few years. It'd be interesting.
We do know that Square Enix likes to kind of juggle 3 projects at a time.
Yeah.
So maybe I could see. I personally don't think I would want a 16. Like I just want more of this, honestly, right now.
Yeah, and I think whatever 16 is, like I think it's very different.
I will say I wanted to ask you this after beating 15. As someone who was even just mildly interested in 15, if I enjoyed this, would I enjoy 15?
The combat is not as good.
Okay.
And I wonder if coming to it as quickly as you do, like if you go to it like right off the heels of 7, that might have might give you a negative impression. I think 7 is just a better game. I think. And part of that's probably fueled by nostalgia and characters, right? Like these are probably better characters for sure.
Yeah.
It's tough. I don't know. The combat in 15 is simpler. You don't have as much control, I think, over the party. It's different. It's very different.
Okay.
I think you might still like it, and you could probably get it cheap enough that if you didn't like it, I guess you wouldn't feel that bad about it.
Yeah.
I like 15, and I feel like time has not been kind to it. I like 15. I do. And But at the same time, I think it's like easy to like play 7 and then look back at 15 and go, oh, oh yeah,
Yeah.
this is like head and shoulders above that.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't know. It's not, worth giving it a shot if you can find it cheap enough. Some of the DLC that I played was good.
Okay. Yeah, I know there's like the
and like
Royal Edition.
I do think that with all of this like patches and extra stuff they included later on, like you're playing a better version, right?
Okay.
It's kind of like people who play like Mass Effect 3, right? Like a year later, they're playing, some may say a better version of that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
some would say there is not a better version of that game.
Maybe. So we've gone for a while. Let's do some quick, like last minute, just like speculation. Any like last like couple or few closing points of like speculation of what you expect from the next part.
So even just speculation stuff, like I think about, kind of going back to the music of like, hey, we got the gold saucer theme, that kind of stuff. Like, it almost wonders to me that like there's not going to be a gold saucer in the coming ones, just because like that's just a way for them to fit this theme in, and then like they're actually not going to go to the gold saucer. I mean, that's probably, I don't know. This is just kind of stuff I think about with that sort of thing. I worry about getting too much into the speculation of like kind of like what Maximilian did. I mean, I love all of it. I think it's fantastic. I would love for that to be true. But kind of going back to the Star Wars route again, it was like after Force Awakens, there was like so much stuff you didn't know, and like all the speculation, like, oh, Snoke is Mace Windu, and here's all this evidence, all of that kind of stuff. And then when it's not
that, you're disappointed.
Exactly. And so that's what I worry about. Like, oh, okay, well, we're going to do this thing, and then Aerith's not going to die, and there's going to, be all of these changes. That this is going to, like, Leslie's going to show back up, and Leslie's going to take down Don Corneo, and I just feel like...
That's almost definitely going to happen, right?
Yeah, I would assume so. But it's like, I feel like they're setting the pieces really well, that like I just don't want to get too ahead of myself just to be let down, being like, oh well, this is what we were gonna do, and that I don't know. I've gotten that way with several games.
I think that's smart too. I think it's wise to like maybe give yourself some distance and go, okay.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, at the end of the day, like even if your predictions and speculation isn't true, like you still want, like, it can still be good. You can be wrong and it can still be good. Yeah.
Sure.
That said, let me tell you. So, no, I do think it would be fun to open the next game playing as Zack.
Yeah.
That would be a fun, like, but if they do it, they can't tell you. They can't put it in the launch trailer. They will, but they shouldn't.
Yeah.
It has to be a surprise, right? Like,
even the same thing with like Red 13. Like, I wish they didn't show any Red 13 in the trailers.
Me too. I mean, even like that one's a little different, right? Because you're like, well, he's definitely going to be in. Sure. But yeah, like you should go back and watch the launch trailer and just be angry.
Okay.
It is ridiculous how much is in that trailer. It's purely ridiculous.
Yeah, I'll watch it.
It'd be great if the beginning, if you're like doing the opening and you're leaving Midgar and you get to the first town and there's a late title card, but instead of saying Final Fantasy VII 2, it just says like Nier 3 or something. That'd be cool.
Executive producer Yoko Taro.
Yeah. Yoko Taro actually is the final boss after Sephiroth.
Well, he can be a final boss in Automata DLC and all that, or whatever the Square Enix executives, I guess.
Cool. Well, Colin, I think that's all I got. I think talking for 3.5 hours about Final Fantasy VII is everything I needed.
It's not enough.
It's not. It never is.
It's not enough.
This is rivaling our Final Fantasy VII or it's rivaling our Resident Evil 7 Spoilercast.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed that because both times I literally just finished it and then we'd started recording.
Yeah. That's how you do it.
I don't know if I know that one was over 3 hours also. I don't know if this one has officially topped it yet.
Right. We'll have to go back to the tapes.
Yeah, I have to go back, and we'll be back next week to record more if we're short of
Yeah.
beating the Resident Evil 7 time.
And yeah, and we'll be back in whenever you end up finishing RE3, we'll just come back.
Yeah.
So
Sounds good.
Collin,
look forward to that.
Thanks so much for joining me to talk about this and talk through our thoughts. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. If there's ever been any more truer words between games, I'll bring up a words from Death Stranding with Final Fantasy VII Remake now. Curtis, tomorrow is in your hands.
Thank you.
You're welcome.